Chapter 1041, Calculations I. Du Qi felt as though he had been granted amnesty as soon as Li Ziming spoke. Sweat poured from his forehead like rain as he kowtowed 9 times before finally retreating. "Thank you, Taoist master, for sparing my life," said Du Qi. Li Ziming did not bother with the small fry, but the members of the Li family all looked displeased. At the foot of the mountain, and Siwei did not spare him a glance. Knowing his place, Du Qi fearfully withdrew down the mountain and fled north under the cover of night. Li Ziming sat quietly for a while until a middle-aged man ascended the steps. His feathered robe gleamed, and his bearing was elegant and dignified. Li Ziming broke into a smile, rose from his desk, and went forward to greet him, Brother Zijai. Li Zijai lowered his head with a smile and cupped his hands in salute. He said, "Greetings, Taoist Master Zheijing. Elder brother, do not make fun of me." Li Ziming shed the airs of a purple mansion realm cultivator with his own brother before him. Just like in the old days, he pulled Li Zijai to sit down beside him and asked with concern, "These years must have been hard on you within the sect. You and Zhao Wei have shouldered the burden of the family, and for 10 years, we have neither lost people nor land. Many have even achieved the foundation establishment realm, all thanks to your efforts. It was mostly Zhao Wei's doing." Li Zijai shook his head modestly, but worry showed on his face as he said quietly, "I just returned from the ancestral hall, where Uncle Yuanqin was still offering rites to our late granduncle. But I ran into people from the Bai'ai capital Immortal Dao fleeing in a hurry. Did something happen?" "Yes," but Li Ziming fell silent. Li Zijai continued, "The Bai'ai capital Immortal Dao's Taoist master Yi Hui is at the mid-stage of the Purple Mansion realm and cultivates the rare Capital Guard Dao lineage. He will not be easy to deal with. Also, I noticed Changxiao Gate was absent from the gathering. That sect truly opposes our family. Chang Xiaozi's divine abilities are formidable, and we must be wary of him." Li Ziming nodded. After waiting for a moment, Li Zhaowei arrived riding a stream of light and saluted the two of them. Only then did Li Ziming bring forth the jade box, frowning as he spoke. "This is the congratulatory gift from the Bai'ai capital Immortal Dao." Both of them inspected it with their spiritual sense, exchanged glances, and their expressions turned grim. Li Zhaowei spoke in a deep voice, reporting to Taoist Master Wen, who is still at the riverbank and has not been recalled to Bai'ai's mountain gate. He carries out his duties daily in the cave. Either this man knows nothing, or he has something to rely on. Li Zijai fell silent for a moment. When Li Ziming did not speak, this elder brother of the Ziyu generation finally opened his mouth with careful, deliberate words. "I heard that Sidu Ku of Golden Tang Gate is still in the Qingdu Water Mansion. Has Golden Tang Gate sent anyone over?" "No." Li Zhaowei answered immediately, his tone heavy. "Sidu Mo is a ruthless and petty man. He will not care about Sidu Ku's life. Unless Taoist Master brings Sidu Ku directly to his door, he will continue to feign ignorance and pretend this man does not exist." Li Zijai said thoughtfully, "The previous matter with the Golden Tang Gate has yet to be resolved, and their backer, the Golden Feather sect, has shown no intention of mediating. The Bai'ai capital Immortal Dao also operates in Jiangbei, colluding with Golden Tang Gate. Our family has no foundation in Jiangbei. Even a mighty dragon cannot suppress a local snake, and moreover, Taoist Master Yi Hui is not weak. That is the first matter. Second, regardless of Chang Xiaozi's intentions, Changxiao Gate already harbors enmity for our family. He is far more dangerous than the Bai'ai capital Immortal Dao. He acts silently, and who can know what vicious schemes he plots? Our family should not act rashly." Li Zhaowei glanced at Li Ziming, who nodded. "Elder brother, your words are most true." Li Ziming paused briefly before continuing. "Du Qi is a clever man and dared not take a seat. If he had embarrassed me in public, he would not have kept his life. That is why I did not permit him to come up on the island, but instead met him alone at Zhaijing Mountain. I did so to avoid the matter escalating and bringing shame upon our family. But still," Li Ziming sighed in a low, heavy voice, "all of this is nothing but a delaying tactic. Changxi is about to fall, and both Yi Hui and Changxiao are in no hurry. They only fear a counterattack from Changxi. Once he dies, the Profound Peak Gate will immediately become a major weakness, and it will be easy for them to move against our family." Li Zijai shuddered, his brow tightly furrowed as he whispered, "To think the rumors are true. How much lifespan does Taoist Master Changxi have left?" Li Ziming exhaled and replied. His words were vague, but it seems he has less than 3 to 5 years left. Then isn't that as fleeting as a single night and day? 3 to 5 years was no more than the span of a single seclusion for a foundation establishment realm cultivator. Li Zijai's mood immediately sank and he replied, "Profound Peak Gate is still to be entrusted to our family. That makes things even harder. We must guard Jiangbei, while also taking care of the wilderness and profound peak gate. Li Zijai had no objections to this. Back then, when he had mistakenly entered the territory of the Dragon Clan, it was the profound peak gate who had covered for him. He paused, then said softly, Jiangbei cannot be abandoned. The territory of Floating Cloud Cave must remain under our family's control. All three understood that if the Li family withdrew from Jiangbei, the Mifan Three sects would immediately start making moves for the northern shore of Moongaze Lake. The combination of Changxiao and Yihui would be overwhelming. The northern shore must never be endangered, thought Li Zijai. A Purple Mansion realm immortal family that could not even hold a single prefecture would become a laughingstock. The Azure Pond sect behind the Li family would likely delight in such a scene. The Xi family was eager to see the Li family in distress and forced to bow their heads once more to the Azure Pond sect for aid. If that came to pass, the entire matter would take on a very different meaning. The Li family was not like the Xiao family. Xiao Shooting had achieved the Purple Mansion realm through his life divine ability, and others had relied on him during the Devil Plague. He himself was a formidable figure, free of worries, and had completely severed all subordination to the Azure Pond sect. On the other hand, Li Ziming, though he had broken through, had left himself a way out and had not cut ties completely. Li Zijai too had not left the Azure Pond sect, leaving the matter ambiguous. In name, they still counted as an immortal family of the Azure Pond sect. Once they sought aid from Azure Pond sect, they would no longer be merely a nominal immortal family, but would openly confirm their status as vassals. The mountainside fell into silence for a moment before Li Zijai asked, "Did Taoist Master Shooting give any instructions?" Li Ziming chose his words carefully before replying. The Taoist master hinted that I could sever ties with Profound Peak. It may not have been his true intention, and perhaps only a test. But judging from the situation, he has never stood firmly on anyone's side, and he already shows signs of washing his hands of the matter. He spoke quietly, unless our family leans toward the Golden Feather sect or Hengzhu Dao. But siding with the Golden Feather sect is little different from bowing our heads again to the Azure Pond sect. As for Hengzhu Dao, they are far to the south. At most, we could treat them as allies, but Hengzhu Dao has no shortage of enemies either. Unless absolutely necessary, Li Ziming would never consider leaning toward the three sects. He simply poured some tea and said with a sigh, "Once these 3 to 5 years have passed, the situation will surely become dire." Li Xiaowei raised his brows, clasped his fists, and spoke solemnly, reporting to Taoist Master. In this junior's view, Yihui and Chengxi are waiting for Taoist Master Chengxi to fall. They are not making any moves right now, but we cannot just sit and await our doom. Why not take advantage of Taoist Master Chengxi still being alive to settle matters in Jiangbei, strike hard at the Golden Tang Gate and the Bei'ai capital Immortal Dao, and secure our foothold in Jiangbei? Li Ziming nodded and said, "I understand your meaning. But at best, it will end up with seizing most of the territory of the Mifan Two sects. Can that truly cause any substantive loss to the Bei'ai capital Immortal Dao? As for the Golden Tang Gate, the Golden Feather sect stands behind them. We can demand compensation, but we must not act rashly. Once Chengxi dies, how could we possibly defend the vast lands of the Mifan Two sects? Losing them would be only a matter of days." Li Zijai kept silent, while Li Xiaowei replied in a firm and resonant voice, "Taoist Master, if we advance one more step today, we will have one more step to retreat tomorrow. Even if the territory we seize eventually falls back into the hands of the Bei'ai capital Immortal Dao, it will at least be left barren and stripped clean. That is far better than leaving it firmly in their grasp from the beginning." Li Xiaowei spoke resolutely. "What's more, the situation for our family is gradually deteriorating. At present, it is the Bei'ai capital Immortal Dao that seeks stability, while it is we of the Li family who must seek change. Only in chaos can there be transformation. Who knows how many variables might arise in 3 to 5 years of struggle. No matter how things change in the future, it will always be better than doing nothing, clinging only to Floating Cloud Cave's territory and waiting for death." Chapter 1042, Calculations II. Li Ziming exchanged a glance with his elder brother and then nodded firmly, "Very well." He rose to his feet and said solemnly, "All matters in Jiangbei will be handed over entirely to Minghuang. Should there be any demands, bring them to me directly. I will go meet Chengxi. With Wenhu's handle in our hands, there is much to be done." He gave his sleeve a slight flick, and various jade boxes, stone cases, and various spirit items appeared upon the desk. Li Ziming said simply, The congratulatory gifts from the various families are all here, including several Dharma artifacts. Ming Wang, take them down first and divide them among Cheng Hui and the others. Li Xiaowei expressed his thanks respectfully, gathered up the items, and was about to take his leave when Li Zijai also produced 2 jade boxes and said softly, "The Azure Ponsec's congratulatory gift was the pill formula for the essence gathering pill, which is with the Taoist master. These 2 Dharma artifacts are from my own collection. They are not particularly precious, but let them first be added for the family's use." Li Xiaowei gave thanks with due reverence and departed on a stream of light, while Li Zijai sighed with regret. "It is a pity that I remain the master of Azure Pond Peak. The Azure Pond sect cannot permit me to act freely." Li Ziming waved his hand and said, "You have been wronged, elder brother. But we must also keep the Xi family appeased. Moreover, once we sever ties with the Azure Pond sect, the Xi and Lingu families would surely push all the blame onto our family if Kai Buzi were to press the matter in the future. They could then wipe us out without scruple, and with the excuse in name to do so." His expression turned grave, and he spoke in a low voice. "There is one matter I must tell you, elder brother. It concerns something of great importance." Li Zijai's expression grew serious as he listened to Li Ziming say, "Yang Tiania broke through to Purple Mansion realm long ago. He has kept it hidden for decades." Li Zijai was stunned and raised his head in disbelief. Li Ziming recounted everything regarding the people of the underworld's judiciary. Li Zijai fell into deep thought and after a long while finally said, "The ambitions of the Yang family are vast." Li Zijai understood everything from the moment he heard that Yang Tiania had already broken through to the Purple Mansion realm. From the feathered robe given by Yang Xiaor that repeatedly protected him, to the talisman from Yang Ruizhao that made Chuoba Changyuan hesitate for that crucial instant, even to Yuan Tuan's talks of marriage with the Yang family and the sudden transformation of the Kai family's situation, he now saw the indistinct traces running through them all. "I understand now." Seeing that Li Zijai already had it figured out, Li Ziming did not say more. Li Zijai quickly set the topic aside and asked, "Which figures does Taoist master intend to visit?" This was a troublesome matter, but Li Ziming already had some preparations in mind. He answered, "The first is naturally Taoist master Yuan Ziu. Second, I must also go meet Senior Zio. But this third one, here I am at an impasse." Li Zijai was slightly surprised and asked, "Senior Tu Longjian?" Li Ziming shook his head and said, "Taoist Master Shooting already said he does not wish to be involved. Even if I went, I would not be able to see him." Li Zijai immediately understood and began to count them off in his mind. There is no need to visit Profound Peak Gate, since Chengxi no longer cares for such matters. As for Snow Jai, Chengxiao and Purple Smoke Gates, they need not be considered either. That leaves the Sword Gate, the Golden Feather Sect, the Hengzhu Dao Gate, and the Ziyuqi Dao Gate. The Golden Feather Sect and the Hengzhu Dao Gate are troublesome choices, for whichever they visited would mean greatly offending the other. Visiting the Golden Feather Sect would offend Hingli, while visiting the Hengzhu Dao Gate would offend Tiank, and on the surface both factions treated the Li family quite well. Tiank and Hingli were not ones to be trifled with. If they only visited the other two, resentment was inevitable. Li Ziming said, "In truth, we could also make a visit to the Sword Gate. Our forebears' sword intent is inscribed upon their sword manual. If I go under the pretext of paying respects to his sword intent, it would not be considered perfunctory." Li Zijai did not know much about such matters, so he did not say more. He only offered a reminder, saying, "When Uncle Yunkin arrives, you and I must meet him. Pingya Island." In the grand hall, light radiated brilliantly, illuminating every corner. Li Xuangshuan, dressed in a blue-gray robe, sat in the main seat as two people entered from outside. A woman at the Foundation establishment realm led the way. She appeared to be in her 40s and still carried traces of grace and charm. She wore a white Dharma robe with jade ornaments. Her face retained hints of youthful beauty, yet she had not used mana to preserve her looks, instead deliberately allowing her age to show. She was followed by a man in black whose heroic spirit surged forth. He too was at the Foundation establishment. His mana was not especially profound, but his sharp brows and eyes gave off a keen edge. The woman bowed gently and greeted respectfully, "Hemian pays respects to my elder brother." Li Xuangshuan hurriedly helped her up, his gaze showing a touch of excitement as he said with a nod, "Sister-in-law. In those years I never had the fortune to meet you. Yuanqin pays respects to granduncle," said the other man. Li Xuangshuan, looking every bit his age, received the greeting with courtesy. Li Yuanqin was very respectful toward him, and the elder quickly took his arm, examining him closely. His eyes reddened slightly as he said, "You truly look so much like him." It was unclear whether he spoke of Li Xuanfeng or Li Xiangping. Li Yuanqin listened silently as Li Xuanxuan spoke again and again. "Of the 4 branches of our family, the uncle's line has always been missing. Now that you have returned, Yuanqin, you need not leave again. Take your rightful place, fill in for the next generation, and continue your uncle's incense." Li Yuanqin hesitated in silence, but Ning Hemian spoke up in a gentle voice. "Elder brother, my brother did not know what was good for him, and his folly led to his death. His entire line perished with him, leaving not a single heir. Fortunately, our clansman Ning Heiyuan left behind an orphan, though the child is not yet of use. The Ning family now relies entirely on Yuanqin to support it. At such a time, it is truly difficult for him to return." Li Xuanxuan was struck speechless. He could say little in response to Ning Hemian's words, and since Li Yuanqin had grown up within the sect, he felt little attachment to the Li family itself and clearly had no intention of staying. As he hesitated, heavenly light streamed into the hall from outside, transforming into 2 men. One wore a white gold Taoist robe, and the other a heavenly glow-feathered robe. They halted in the center of the hall, and Li Yuanqin immediately cupped his hands to bow, saying, "Greetings, Taoist Master Zheajing and the Master of Jiyushan Pavilion." Li Zijai dared not let him bow and quickly helped him up. Having overheard the earlier exchange, he urged, "Uncle, the family's uncle's line has no one left, it still needs your support. If Granduncle could see this scene, he too would hope for you to remain within the family." Li Ziming took over, speaking solemnly. "This junior is just about to pay respects to Taoist Master Yuan Ziu. As long as Uncle says the word, I need not worry about anything else." Listening to the two, Li Yuanqin responded respectfully. "With Taoist Master Zheajing and the Master of Jiyushan Pavilion above, and with Taoists Mingwang, Chenghui and the others, the family is as stable as Mount Tai. But my maternal Ning family is on the verge of collapse, and my mother cannot support it alone. I fear I cannot return to the family, and I beg your forgiveness." His expression was resolute. Ning Hemian also added her plea, leaving Li Xuanxuan no choice but to sigh and see them off. Li Ziming waited in the courtyard for a while before Li Zijai returned on glowing clouds, sighing, "With the 4 branches unable to be restored, this will surely be a regret for our late grandfather." Li Ziming only said, "When Uncle has a son in the future, we can take him back into the family. Even if he is just a mortal, it will suffice. With unrest ahead for the family, perhaps it is for the best that Uncle remains in the Azure Pond sect." Chapter 10:43 Splitting the Treasures, the Heavenly Glow Dawn Cloudliner. Li Yuanqin stood on the deck, watching the pitch-black night wind weave beneath the heavenly glow. His mother, Ning Hemian, stood beside him. After a long silence, Ning Hemian said, "In truth, now that the southern border is stable, remaining on the lake may not be a bad choice." "It will be difficult." Li Yuanqin shook his head. "Li Xiaowei is a genius, and Li Chenghui is also an outstanding figure of his generation. I am neither strong nor bound by close ties of kinship. Even though Taoist Master Zheajing has achieved the Purple Mansion realm and might acknowledge someone as young as me as an elder, the factions within the family will hardly respect me. A sudden appearance of a so-called elder of lofty seniority would only stir resentment. Whoever it may be, no one would accept it. At most, I would be ridiculed and perhaps given a nominal idle post. It would be better to stay away, to be out of sight and out of mind. Once I left, returning would become difficult, and offending so many people would be inevitable. Right now, keeping these ties leaves me with ample prospects within the sect. I can advance or retreat as needed. Is that not far better than remaining in the Li family?" Ning Hemian understood the reasoning and sighed. "Li Xuanxuan treats you with sincerity, regarding you as his own junior." "That is true," Li Yuanqin nodded. "My uncle is indeed earnest toward me, but he is only at the Qi cultivation realm. His will is soft and his words hold little weight. He may speak well for me in private, but he would hardly be able to support me in the family." The Li family appears harmonious, but no family or sect in this world can truly remain free of discord. It only seems so because discipline is strict, the elders are in their prime, and each generation's strength is clearly defined. That is what creates the appearance of peace. Leaning against the stern, he gazed at the bright moon in the sky and said casually, "The Li family will not live in peace in the days ahead either. After all, it is what my father dedicated his heart to. If I can help, then I should help." Ning Hemian nodded and asked, "The white lightning has already been sent to the southern border. Should it be returned?" Li Yuanqin paused briefly, then shook his head. "There is no need. No one in the vast Azure Pond sect has yet to gain the bow's recognition. See, Yuan Li himself once tried to draw it, and the moment he released it, blood flowed from his hand. Leaving it in Azure Pond sect is fine. When the Li family produces someone truly worthy, they can come and claim it. Li Xiaowei descended from Zhaijing Mountain to find Chen Yang waiting at the foot. He instructed, "Go invite the Taoists back to the island. We have important matters to discuss." Chen Yang promptly hurried away. Li Xiaowei rode a stream of light down into the main hall, just as Siwei approached quickly and reported respectfully, "Family head, Tian Zhongqing entered seclusion a few days ago. He is preparing to break through to the Foundation establishment realm." Li Xiaowei was slightly surprised, then said with a nod, "Such courage." Tian Zhongqing was already an old man, having once served under Li Yuanxiu, the eldest son of Li Xuanxuan. Now he was 105 years old, a late-stage qi cultivation realm cultivator for most of his life, and among the rare few of a foreign surname who had returned from Jiangbei. His chances of breaking through to the Foundation establishment realm were pitifully low, yet since the old man still wished to attempt it, Li Xiaowei had no intention of discouraging him. After calculating the time, he asked, "Li Wen has been in seclusion for 7 years now, hasn't he?" And Siwei nodded in reply. The minor branch of the Li family was not descended from the 4 main cultivation branches, and its innate ability was not high. Li Wen was already the foremost of the minor branch line, and though he could not yet attempt the Foundation establishment realm at 60, he had a far greater chance than Tian Zhongqing with the essence-gathering pill. 7 years is a bit too long. He may be in danger. Li Xiaowei still remembered the honest man who stood daily at the Great Hall's gate, gripping a pair of golden maces. He felt a pang of regret and thought. He cultivated the guardian of the courtly path and secluded himself within the spirit jade mines. He should have had considerable confidence with the jade veins flourishing. While Li Xiaowei pondered, Li Minggong and the others descended into the hall. Li Minggong wore a crimson dress, while Li Chenghui stood beside her in silver armor over a black robe. Once they had taken their places, Li Xiaowei picked up a stone box from the desk and carefully opened it. Inside lay a small hexagonal lamp, its body gleaming like brass and adorned with bright red patterns of true flame. Li Xiaowei handed it to Li Minggong with a smile. "Aunt, this is the 6-cornered scarlet flame lamp, gifted by the Golden Feather sect. It is a fine Foundation establishment realm Dharma artifact. Take it and use it first." Li Minggong thanked him repeatedly, receiving it with joy. Both sects' gifts were suited to their status. The essence-gathering pill formula from the Azure Pond sect was indeed precious, yet somewhat opportunistic, while the 6-cornered scarlet flame lamp was truly practical. The remaining gifts were from the 7 gates. Excluding those from Snow Jai Gate and Chengxiao Gate, there were 5 in total. Li Xiaowei retrieved a jade bottle from Hangzhou Dao Gate and handed it to Li Minggong. "These sects have shown their goodwill. The pure feather Li fire may not be true flame, but it is Luan fire and matches well with the pheasant Li march. Aunt, accept it first." Li Minggong looked a little embarrassed, but still accepted it after seeing his brow furrow. Li Xiaowei then drew out a long jade box from the Sword Gate's offering. Opening it, he found a Foundation establishment realm spirit sword, the Dark Sea Serpent. In the family, only Uncle Chenghui wields a sword, but he has yet to emerge from seclusion, muttered Li Xiaowei. Thus, he had no choice but to put it away for now. The Burning Flame Pill manual from the Purple Smoke Gate had already been taken by Li Ziming, leaving only the Profound Peak Gate's gifts, the Earth-bearing Spirit Shield and the Earthbending Boots. Since Profound Peak Gate sought their favor, the gifts they offered were better. Li Xiaowei took out the 2 Dharma artifacts, the Earth-bearing Spirit Shield, condensed from stone and soil with a spirit turtle pattern, and the Earthbending Boots, ornate and luxurious, adorned with heavenly glow patterns. Both were genuine Earth Virtue Dharma artifacts. "Thunder drowns within Earth, these 2. Uncle Chenghui cannot make use of them," said Li Xiaowei. He handed the Earthbending Boots to Siwei. The middle-aged man's face was filled with shock, clearly never expecting to receive a Dharma artifact himself. His words of gratitude, however, were cut off by Li Xiaowei. "These boots restore mana upon touching the ground and also enhance speed. Protector, refine them later. For now, go to the riverbank and deliver the Earth-bearing Spirit Shield to the White Ape. That item suits him perfectly." And Siwei nodded rapidly, striding out with quick, almost buoyant steps, clearly exhilarated. Li Xiaowei then took out the congratulatory gift from Ziyuqi Temple, a talisman covered with ornate patterns, and said with a smile, "This is a mountain spirit talisman. It holds Foundation establishment realm strength, but in our hands, each use consumes it bit by bit. That would be a waste. I will leave it for Qiwen, she should gain something from it." Li Chenghui examined it closely. For him, it wasn't merely that each use would deplete it was that he could not use it at all. He chuckled and shook his head. After reviewing the offerings from the 3 sects and 7 gates, Li Xiaowei then took out the art of Miao Tai transformation from the Slaughter Jun gate. It described methods of absorbing Li fire and consuming earth fiends, allowing one to cultivate a baleful earthfare qi that, when breathed out, could force others to reveal their forms. Taoist Master Junjian achieved a divine ability. Slaughter Jun Gate refines both earthfire and cold baleful qi, and is renowned for drawing out baleful qi, said Li Xiaowei. Li Xiaowei hesitated for a moment. The earthfire baleful qi was not something Li Chenghui could cultivate, so he could only leave it to Li Minggong for study. At this point, only one jade box remained on the table. Li Xiaowei casually opened it, revealing a pair of dark golden rounded clasps that were as thick as a thumb and the size of a palm. A chilling metallic aura emanated from it, the white shadow gold clasps from Chengyan Gate. Li Xiaowei felt somewhat helpless. He glanced at Li Chenghui, hesitating, while Li Minggong stifled a laugh and remarked, "What a coincidence this is." The elegant young man in silver armor and black robes looked equally awkward. Yet he himself took it lightly, smiling as he said, "Fading thunder falls into metal, and this dewy metal artifact. Ordinarily I would manage, but if I were ever injured, the artifact's metallic chill would end up wounding me instead." Chapter 1044, Cultivators of the Floating Cloud Cave I. This pair of white shadow gold clasps did not suit him, but Li Chenghui showed no hint of regret as he said, "Thunder-type Dharma artifacts are rare in the various Daos of Jiangnan. Even the elders of my family, after cultivating for centuries, have only barely seen a few. I already have the 6-fold profound thunder punishment tokens. That will suffice. This item suits Zhuliuo, so it can be left for him." Li Xiaowei had no choice but to put away the pair of white shadow gold clasps. The lamps in the hall flickered dimly as he solemnly said, "Bring up those cultivators from Floating Cloud Cave for inspection. Our manpower is lacking. We must guard Jiangbei once we cross the lake, so a few of them may be promoted for use." Wenhu and Ping Wangzi had already brought the core members of Floating Cloud Cave and delivered them to the Qingdu Cave dwelling some time ago. But with recent ceremonies keeping them occupied, the matter had not yet been dealt with. "I will go at once." Li Minggong nodded and withdrew. Li Xiaowei turned to Li Chenghui and simply said, "The northern bank is guarded by the White Ape and Ensiwei. Uncle, I must trouble you to take some men to the Floating Cloud Cave territory, seize control of it, and prevent any mishaps." Li Chenghui likewise withdrew. Li Xiaowei remained seated in the main position for a while, until Li Ziming manifested out of midair and stood at the head of the hall. The entire grand hall brightened at once. "Greetings, Taoist master," said Li Xiaowei. He rose and stepped aside. At that moment, Li Minggong brought the group of cultivators from Floating Cloud Cave forward. One by one, they lowered their heads timidly, fear written in their eyes. There were about 18 or 19 in the group, most of them cultivators of late Qi cultivation realm to foundation establishment realm. They looked utterly miserable and destitute. Many were bearing wounds, and their faces were as ashen as paper. Li Minggong said respectfully, reporting to Taoist Master, "Here are all the remnants of Floating Cloud Cave. There are 13 Qi cultivation realm cultivators, 5 at foundation establishment realm, 3 devil cultivators, and 2 immortal cultivators." Li Ziming raised his brows as he looked over them. The Qi cultivation realm cultivators were in somewhat better condition, since they merely had their cultivation sealed, but the foundation establishment realm cultivators were far more wretched. Their hands were shackled behind their backs with heavy gray manacles, and their necks bound fast by white iron chains etched with dense formation patterns. Their heads could not move, forcing them to stare rigidly straight ahead. Li Xiaowei glanced over the 5 foundation establishment realm cultivators. Nearly half of them carried an aura of darkness and uncertainty. They were clearly of little worth in their daily conduct. The man in the center was especially tall and his features still somewhat handsome, yet both eyes had been gouged out and his collarbones were pierced with iron nails. He crouched on the ground, plainly unable to rise. "What sort of people are these?" asked Li Ziming, who sat down in turn. Having been in seclusion for many years, he naturally did not recognize this group, but Li Minggong, who had dealt with Floating Cloud Cave for so many years, knew them well. She first released the seals on one of them. The tall, thin elder had white hair, but a youthful face. A palm print marred his chest, caving in most of it to the point where his heart thudded visibly within. Ignoring his injuries, he forced a fawning smile and said, "This humble cultivator greets Taoist Master. I am Buzhai, originally a cultivator of the Eastern Sea. Some years ago I was invited to practice in Floating Cloud Cave. Who could have thought that Fudu would prove so treacherous and offend your esteemed family? I have truly been wronged." His words flowed smoothly enough, but his heart was already visibly quaking. He had never before faced a Purple Mansion realm cultivator directly. He only dared to lower his head and didn't dare look up. Li Minggong sneered and explained, "This man is an Eastern Sea cultivator who practices the Earth Virtue, the Concealed Containment Palace. He is vicious and cunning, forever scheming year after year, yet he never dared to fight our family directly." At these words, heavenly light stirred faintly between Li Ziming's brows. He discerned that this man indeed cultivated a devil technique and was an Eastern Sea cultivator, yet his aura of murky qi was the lightest of the five here. He said, "The matters of the past will not be pursued too heavily, but my family has always upheld the righteous path. We cannot permit a devil cultivator to remain unchecked." For Buzhai, these words were like a royal pardon. He hastily fell to his knees and replied, "Taoist master, though my concealed containment palace is a devil technique, it merely uses decayed corpses long buried in the earth as sustenance. For hundreds of years at most, I have only done things like digging up ancestral graves, but I have never committed acts that harm heaven and reason. My Tao foundation is ill-suited for combat, nor do I fancy consuming living men. Though my hidden virtue may be lacking, my open virtue remains without fault." He wailed these words loudly, and Li Ziming frowned at the sight. Devil techniques were numerous, and such a method might truly exist. Li Minggong cast a glance at the old man and asked, "Why haven't you recited your technique yet?" The old man quickly drew a jade slip from his robes. Though he had never carried his techniques with him, a Foundation Establishment realm cultivator could swiftly imprint jade slips with spiritual sense. In just a few moments, he had copied the method and presented the slip. Li Ziming skimmed it briefly. The technique was called the Concealed Earth Containment Palace Method, a type of earth virtue art that indeed consumed hidden virtue. It could not touch much blood qi, and this gave him pause. If viewed in this light, is this truly still a devil technique? It bears too close a resemblance to the Purple Mansion and Golden Core Daos, thought Li Ziming. The Li family's first encounter with a devil technique had been the Blood Dharma Manual, one of the few high-grade devil arts to spread widely across Jiangnan. Its poison was far-reaching, with traces even now in Jiangbei, the Central Plain, and the southern border. Devil techniques were also called the Diverse Mansion Unified Furnace Tao, and the Blood Dharma Manual was a quintessential example. In the Qi cultivation realm, the Shenyang, Juk, and Qihai 3 mansions were merged into a diverse mansion, making the body into a vessel adrift upon a sea of suffering. From there, cultivation proceeded within the diverse mansion. Having attained divine ability, Li Ziming now viewed cultivation methods from an entirely different perspective. He sensed a subtle truth that everything stemmed from the same root, no matter the myriad changes. Back then, he had felt little when reading the method, only noting that the Blood Dharma Manual required cultivating the Suomo Ridge within the diverse mansion to achieve a Devil Tao Foundation establishment realm. But seeing this now, he began to gain new insight. The Blood Dharma Manual takes great pains to disguise the connection, but it becomes clear once one's cultivation reaches a certain height. In terms of the Purple Mansion and Golden Core Daos, it is nothing more than establishing a Tao foundation known as Suomo Ridge. The Concealed Earth Containment Palace method was ancient, and its nature all the more blatant, with scarcely any concealment. Though it too required the merging of the three mansions at the start, its later stages followed much the same path. Li Ziming reckoned that if a Purple Mansion realm cultivator of the earth virtue appeared, they might well be able to transform this technique into an immortal. No wonder the northern regions call the Purple Mansion and Golden Core Daos the Purple Gold Devil Tao, and the Diverse Mansion Unified Furnace Tao the Heaven-born Devil Tao, grouping them as one and the same. They are indeed not far apart. If I were willing to devote myself to the art of merging the three mansions, I might even be able to transform the radiant essence scripture into a Devil Tao cultivation method. A sudden flash of insight stirred within him, and he furrowed his brows. Then for the Devil Tao, breaking through the Purple Mansion realm simply means pushing the Diverse Mansion into the Great Void. Since the Tao Foundation already lies within the Diverse Mansion, there is no need to be like the Immortal Tao to first push the Tao Foundation into Shenyang Mansion. Could it be that breaking through to the Purple Mansion realm is actually easier for the Devil Tao? If the Devil Tao faces no other obstacles, then as I stand now, with only Shenyang Mansion placed within the Great Void and everything else discarded, my state is essentially equivalent to the Devil Tao's Purple Mansion realm. The difference lies merely in one being called Shengyang Mansion, the other Diverse Mansion. In other words, were it not for the merging of the three mansions requiring blood qi, then after the ancient cataclysm, the Diverse Mansion Unified Furnace method is in fact the more advanced and superior path of cultivation, greatly saving the resources consumed in pushing an immortal foundation into Shengyang Mansion. Chapter 10:45, Cultivators of the Floating Cloud Cave, II. As Li Ziming studied the concealed Earth Containment Palace method, he was almost certain it was a technique from the time of the ancient cataclysm. It bore clear traces of the heaven-born Devil Dao diverging from the purple-gold Devil Dao and striking out on its own. If only there were a purple mansion realm method of the heaven-born Devil Dao, that would be even better, thought Li Ziming. This was no small gain. He felt as though a door had been flung open, and his heart grew clear. This shows that seeking reference methods need not be bound by distinctions of immortal or devil. As long as it is a bright Yang Devil technique, I can cultivate it and forge another divine ability. The other Purple Mansion realm techniques were still far beyond reach. It was no more than a faint hope in his heart, so he merely said aloud, though the concealed Earth Containment Palace method is ancient, it cannot be entirely counted as a devil technique. You simply could not see it clearly. Minggong, release him first. The old man froze. To him, the Diverse Mansion was by definition a devil technique. Never had he heard of one that did not fully qualify, but the words of a Purple Mansion realm cultivator were law itself. Overjoyed, he kowtowed and cried out, "Many thanks, Taoist master. I was wrongly accused for over 100 years. Without your guidance, I would have carried this injustice to my grave." These were empty words for the sake of appearances, and Li Ziming did not bother to respond. Looking more closely, he saw that the other two devil cultivators indeed practiced the blood dharma manual. Their murky qi surged skyward, their blood qi evidently never broken, as they shivered on the ground. Li Ziming had only just turned his gaze on them without even speaking when one of them, whose face still bore a semblance of honesty, was already weeping. Tears streamed as he cried plaintively, "Taoist master, please hear me out." He kowtowed and said, "I am Wen Yi, and this is my younger brother Wen Shan. We were both born in the Eastern Sea. Our parents cultivated the Devil Dao, and we practiced devil techniques from the age of 6, eating rice meat until our blood qi brimmed in abundance. It was only when we grew older and entered the qi cultivation realm that we understood what those things truly were. But we never thought it was strange, as we were raised in devil lands and taught only by our parents. Only when we entered the mainland did we realize that not everyone in the world cultivated this way." Seeing death looming before him, Wen Yi broke into a sweat, his thick brows damp, tears streaming down his face as he said, "It is not that I refuse to do good, but that I never knew there was a righteous Tao. Nor is it that I am cruel by nature. I supported my parents above and cared for my younger brother below, never thinking myself an evil man. But, in the devil lands, with no one to teach me, how was I to know it was a crime? I begged Taoist master to see clearly and grant me a chance to repent and change." These words made Li Minggong frown at first. The other devil cultivator, Wen Shan, was stunned as well, never expecting his elder brother to speak so. But on reflection, it was indeed true. He quickly kowtowed in turn and said, "We only ask Taoist master to spare us a path to live." Li Minggong paused, then said hesitantly, "Whether one knows guilt is one thing, whether one bears guilt is another." Li Ziming listened carefully, and it seemed to stir some heavy memories within him. He pondered for a few seconds, then looked again at the two men's cultivation. Both had barely reached the foundation establishment realm and were of little real use. Bringing his two fingers together, he summoned forth a shimmer of golden divine light. Go. He drew out 2 threads of bright yang divine power, which slithered like serpents into their diverse mansion, locking their immortal foundations. Li Ziming said simply, "The 9 Gates mountain on the western shore often lacks cultivators for refining. I will spare your lives. Go there and tend the fire veins in the mountains, supplying mana." The 2 divine abilities he left within them both carried the suppressive force of the heaven-venerating gate. They could scatter the brothers' spell arts at will and shatter their diverse mansions at any moment, killing them instantly. Their condition allowed them only to output mana and use spiritual sense, making them suitable to fuel flames for refining artifacts. Since the fire veins of 9 Gates Mountain were fierce, Qi Cultivation Realm cultivators struggled to manage them. The 2 brothers could tend the fire veins daily, saving much effort. "Thank you, Taoist master." The brothers rose, drenched in sweat. Though they had lost their freedom, life was still far better than death. Obediently, they knelt off to the side. Of the two remaining cultivators of the Purple Mansion and Golden Core Dao, Li Ziming's gaze fell upon the old crone before him. Her appearance was rather unsightly, but her garments were wrapped tightly about her frame and golden chi coiled around her. In a hoarse voice she said, "My name is Jiang Huzi. I greet Taoist Master." Li Minggong hesitated slightly, then spoke, "Taoist Master, this one is also a cultivator of Floating Cloud Cave, but she has always remained within the sect and never stepped outside, so we have no real information about her." Jiang Huzi's aged voice spoke softly, "I am but a talisman drawer from Zhao State. I settled in Jiangbei and have lived here for over 200 years. Now I am at death's door." She gave a small smile. Her eyes looked gentle, even carrying a trace of ease, as she revealed her yellowed teeth. "The two sects would never leave anything worthwhile for your esteemed family. Those few young ones with some innate ability were all killed outright. As for those of us left behind with some nominal status, we are nothing but the old, the weak, the sick, and the crippled." This elder was somewhat unusual. Not only was she surrounded by pure qi, but she also turned out to be from Zhao State and carried herself with a certain dignity. Li Ziming paused briefly, unwilling to harm the innocent, and said gently, "Since Taoist Mistress is a righteous cultivator of the North, then feel free to do as you will. You may remain in my family to draw talismans and stroll about the lake, or you may depart on your own." When Jiang Huzi agreed, Li Ziming's gaze naturally shifted to the burly, broad-shouldered man. His features were handsome yet ruined. His eyes were gouged out and his collarbones were pierced through. Li Minggong immediately understood and explained, "This is Ding Weizeng of Floating Cloud Cave. He achieved foundation establishment some years ago and is not weak. His immortal foundation is the rare Palace Sun Tiger, belonging to the Hengzhu Dao lineage." The Hengzhu Dao lineage. Li Ziming immediately frowned. Dao lineages of the Hengzhu Dao were exceedingly few in the world. There were still some to be found in the north, but in the south they were entirely concentrated under the control of the Hengzhu Dao Gate. This immortal Dao possessed the full complement of 5 Dao's techniques, and only with such completeness did it dare to claim the name of Hengzhu. It was impossible not to harbor doubts when a cultivator of the Hengzhu Dao lineage had suddenly appeared, and one of considerable strength at that. Li Ziming looked him over from head to toe and asked, "How did it come to this?" The old man immediately spoke up respectfully, "Taoist Master, this man cultivated the Palace Sun Tiger, an immortal foundation skilled in battle. It can break through bonds, shatter cages, and cross trials by sheer force of will. At first he too was bound like the rest of us, but he proved stubborn, refusing to yield, and repeatedly attempted to escape. He also had some enmity with Wenhu, so his eyes were gouged out, his collarbones nailed through, and his qihai was nearly pierced. He is close to being crippled." Li Ziming felt his heart stir. With a flick, the iron nails in Ding Weizeng's collarbones clattered to the floor, and the many restraints on him dissolved. The man, having lost half his life already, managed to utter a slurred greeting to the Taoist master. Li Zhaowei, who had been standing silently to the side for some time, finally spoke, "Taoist master, this man is a brave warrior." Li Zhaowei had crossed blades with Ding Weizeng before. For him to offer such praise meant the man was no ordinary figure. Li Ziming regarded him with some fondness, but Ding Weizeng stirred his mana and forced out, "My qihai is damaged, and death is near. I only beg Taoist master to let me return to the mountains, to die in my homeland of Jiangbei." Li Ziming stroked his beard, giving no reply. Instead, bright yang divine energy flowed from his hand into the man's body, regenerating his flesh and sealing his qihai, preventing his cultivation from leaking away. Ding Weizeng still stood in a daze, as Li Minggong fed him a pill she had already taken out. The man stood there slightly bewildered, while Buzhai, ever quick to sense the change in the wind, chuckled and said, "Weizeng, hurry and thank the master." Chapter 1046, Two Blessings at Once. Ding Weizeng finally came back to his senses and bowed deeply. His throat had been restored by Li Ziming's divine ability, allowing him to speak again, though his voice was still a little hoarse. "Weizeng thanks the Taoist master. I will never forget this life-saving grace." Li Ziming smiled and shook his head. "Your injury is too severe and has not yet fully healed. My bright yang is not a healing method, only an energy that fosters life. The qihai is one of the 3 mansions, and it is not something I can restore with mere words. I only sealed it temporarily." Li Ziming's own body was condensed from bright yang, and now could be destroyed and remade at will. But Ding Weizeng's qihai was damaged, and it was impossible to treat without treasures such as an Earthview Bloodstone or Heavenly Pure Origin. Heavenly Pure Origin was Purple Mansion origin water, which the Li family naturally did not possess, though half a piece of Earthview bloodstone still remained. Yet Li Ziming had no intention of using such a treasure. He thought it is only damage to the Kihai, not the complete shattering of the mansion. Using an Earthview bloodstone would be wasting great material on a small matter. We just need to find a purple mansion realm cultivator that's good at healing to use their divine ability. It must not be wasted. Since the Li family did not rely on blood qi, the Earthview bloodstone was even more precious to them. This was true even if it did not have so many uses. Li Ziming cherished it greatly and said, "I have my own methods for your Kihai. As for your newly regrown eyes, without the nourishment of an immortal foundation, they will still need some time to temper." "My thanks, master," said Ding Weizeng in a deep voice, bowing. He was much larger than ordinary men, and now that his restraints were undone, his broad frame, square jaw, and bristling beard made him look like a crouching tiger. Li Xiaowei was overjoyed at the sight. Feeling the white shadow gold clasps hidden in his sleeve, he helped him up and said loudly, "In the battle at White River Stream, Fu Du sought to kill me. You fought my clan uncle fiercely and even gained the upper hand for a moment. I remembered you from that day on. It seems we met through combat, but that too is a kind of fate. Your palace sun tiger body is formidable. When Uncle Chenghui hears of this, he will surely be pleased." Ding Weizeng was a handsome man. He had once thought himself a cripple, never expecting the Li family to save him. Now that he understood, he naturally knew how to speak properly and bowed. "I greet the family head. In the past I served another master and did not recognize your esteemed presence. I have offended much." The old man Buzhai, who was also his friend, felt anxious as he listened, thinking to himself, "This child. Floating Cloud Cave has already been destroyed, and still he clings to talk of the old master. He cannot bring himself to speak ill since he grew up in Jiangbei." But Li Xiaowei said nothing more and only helped him up. Li Ziming watched and said with a nod, "Weizeng, go and wait at Zhaijing Mountain." He clasped his hands behind his back, flicked his sleeve, and vanished. Li Xiaowei, however, was more delighted than anyone else. Pulling the man's hand, he led him to the front of the hall and whispered, "Weizeng, do not worry. Once you are healed, the White River Stream territory in Jiangbei will still need you to guard it." The White River Stream territory was home to more than just Floating Cloud Cave. Ding Weizeng froze for a moment, the shock flickering only in his eyes without showing outwardly. Li Xiaowei understood at once that this man was not shallow in character, and his smile grew even broader. Ding Weizeng only spoke in a deep voice, "Many thanks, family head. I only fear that I may have offended the Taoist master in the mountains. I wonder if there are any taboos I should be aware of. Our Taoist master has an easygoing temperament. You may act easily, Weizeng." Li Xiaowei motioned for someone to escort him away. Buzhai stood watching eagerly from the side. The old man was not skilled in combat, but he had a real talent for surveying geomantic lines and nurturing spirit fields. Since Li Xiaowei did not know his temperament, he did not want him lingering on the island and simply ordered, "The territory of Floating Cloud Cave is in ruins. My family uncle has already gone back to where he came from. Elder, since you are familiar with its spirit fields, go there first and lend your aid." Buzhai was shrewd. As soon as he heard this, he dropped to his knees with a thud and wept as he declared, "I, Buzhai, have lived a wretched life. Even in Floating Cloud Cave, I was no more than a soft persimmon for others to squeeze. Yet now I'm entrusted with such a task from an immortal family who values me. From this day on, I shall look only to the Taoist master and the family head, never harboring divided loyalty." Li Xiaowei dismissed him and felt greatly relieved. The old woman, Zhang Huzi, was still watching nearby. She had an aura of pure qi and was advanced in years, so Li Xiaowei spoke to her with more respect. "Where will you go, elder?" Zhang Huzi coughed once and replied, "I do not have many years left. I only wish to find a small mountain among the eastern families to settle down, make some talismans for a living, and finish out my remaining days." Li Xiaowei nodded, but he did not want to let her go so easily. Smiling, he said, "Elder, your talismanic arts are too valuable to be lost. Do you intend to leave behind a Dao lineage?" Zhang Huzi hesitated at those words. After several seconds, she nodded, and Li Xiaowei continued, "In that case, I shall search among the families around the lake for cultivators with an innate ability in the talisman Dao. Elder, you may examine them, accept 10 or so as disciples, and pass down the Dao to the most outstanding." Zhang Huzi agreed gently, and Li Xiaowei allowed her to leave. The brothers Wen Yi and Wen Shan also gave their thanks and withdrew. Only a group of Qi Cultivation Realm disciples remained in the hall, who naturally had nothing important to say. Li Xiaowei selected a few who seemed clean enough and handed them over to Buzhai for work, while the rest were all taken away. The hall grew empty. Li Xiaowei exhaled and turned to Li Minggong. "Aunt, Zhang Huzi's origins are unknown. We must keep a closer watch on her." "I understand," nodded Li Minggong. She had gained the most from this Dharma assembly. The golden feather sect's six-cornered scarlet flame lamp was no simple treasure, and her strength had increased by more than a single level. After a moment of thought, Li Xiaowei added, "Though the brothers Wen Yi and Wen Shan are weak in cultivation, their backgrounds are unclear. We must observe them more closely in the Western Mountains." Now that Li Ziming had broken through to the Purple Mansion realm in a single night, the Li family had ascended to the ranks of the immortal families. They could now confidently recruit Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators as guest cultivators. As for people like Buzhai and Ding Weizeng, they had little chance of wavering. The family's manpower suddenly became much more abundant. "Aunt," before he could finish, both of them looked up in surprise, their gazes turning toward the horizon beyond the hall. In the very next instant, Li Xiaowei's figure, wreathed in dazzling and radiant heavenly light, appeared in midair. All the Foundation Establishment cultivators around the lake, and even those in the late stages of Qi cultivation realm, lifted their heads to look west. At the boundary between light and shadow in the western sky, floating clouds gathered into a vortex. From the center of the cloud eye, a milky white pillar of light shot straight into the heavens, illuminating the entire west. Li Minggong was a step slower as she stepped through the. After observing for a second, she spoke with slight surprise. "A Purple Mansion realm cultivator has failed in attempting the Golden Core realm." "That's right." Li Xiaowei gazed into the distance and replied, "It is in the direction of Mount Changhui." The morning sun was slowly rising in the east, clearing heaven and earth. It was as if a heavy pressure had lifted from the heart, and distant things appeared sharper. Morning mist spread across the land, and the spiritual energy tasted fresh and sweet. Li Minggong lifted her head to look, only to find her mana surging within. Li Xiaowei's golden eyes flickered as he exclaimed in surprise, "The spiritual aura of Jiangnan has changed." More than 30 years ago, the spiritual energy of Jiangnan had already turned into upper evil spirit storage. It aided earth virtue cultivators, devil cultivators, mansion water cultivators, and blood qi cultivation, while suppressing ancient immortal Dao cultivators. Yet this had little to do with the Li family, for the Purple Mansion and Golden Core Daos were not considered the ancient immortal Dao. In fact, cultivation with blood qi had even quickened in recent years. As he felt the pure spiritual qi rising through heaven and earth, Li Xiaowei looked at Li Minggong and said, "The spiritual energy has only been altered for just over 30 years. It should be at its peak right now, and yet it has already changed again." Li Xiaowei nodded and added, "The fall of a cultivator at Mount Changhui is no trivial matter. We must consult the Taoist master about this." He sent someone to Zhaijing Mountain, then descended into the courtyard together with Li Minggong. Just as he was about to speak, he suddenly frowned. His golden pupils dilated sharply, fierce light flashing within, while the heavenly radiance, hidden light at the center of his brows began to glow faintly as he stared at the hall doors. Chapter 1047, Two Blessings at Once II. In the next moment, the Dusheng halberd appeared in his hand in a stream of light. Gripping it firmly, Li Xiaowei said coldly, "Who goes there?" Li Minggong did not sense it at first and only summoned her flames half a beat later. Without a perception technique, she merely stepped back half a pace and cloaked herself in fire to avoid injury. A flicker of gray light and a wisp of black qi appeared, revealing a man before the hall. His brows were slightly arched and his eyes gray-black, but he was smiling. His features were plain and unremarkable. He wore a brown robe and a sword hung at his waist. It was only when he fully revealed himself that he waved his hand hurriedly and laughed. "It has been many years, and Minghuang's spells have only grown stronger. Younger brother." Li Minggong laughed in delight, dispelling her flames. She hurried forward joyfully and said, "So it was you who emerged from seclusion. Why was there no phenomenon?" It was none other than Li Chenghui. Li Xiaowei's expression also eased, his sternness fading. The Dusheng halberd in his hand vanished as he cupped his hands in apology. Li Chenghui, full of vigor, only laughed and said, "Elder sister, you forget that I cultivate the supreme shaman art, the untraceable presence. This immortal foundation conceals the body and hides the breath. Spiritual sense cannot detect it, vision leaves no trace, and only talismans can tell true from false. How could there be any phenomenon?" He paused slightly, studying their faces, then said with a smile, "Judging from your complexions, the family must have stabilized." Li Chenghui had entered seclusion late, at a time when the Li family was struggling, and Li Xiaowei had repeatedly fled from Floating Cloud Cave. Concern had weighed heavily on his heart, so he had come straight to the main hall upon leaving seclusion. To his surprise, Li Minggong covered her mouth and laughed softly. Younger brother, our uncle has already reached Purple Mansion realm. Oh, Li Chenghui froze, his face flushing red. He stared straight ahead for several seconds before speaking. What? Li Minggong said, just a few days ago, all the families came to congratulate us. Several Purple Mansion realm cultivators personally attended the gathering. It was a grand event. If you had emerged a few days earlier, you would have witnessed it. Li Chenghui could not believe it. It was as though he were in a dream. He muttered softly, then our family is now a Purple Mansion immortal family. Exactly so. Li Xiaowei confirmed it, and Li Chenghui could no longer contain himself. He burst into loud laughter and exclaimed joyfully, "You had better not be teasing me." What a floating cloud cave. Floating Cloud Cave has long since been destroyed. Li Minggong recounted everything from beginning to end. Li Chenghui could not suppress the smile tugging at his lips. He let out a long breath and said, I often worried about the family during seclusion. It took nearly a year of recuperation before I could break through. At first, every step was difficult, and I grew weaker by the day. Thankfully, with the aid of the essence gathering pill, I barely managed to hold on. There was still much work ahead, and whether I could break through remained uncertain. But then, the world's spiritual energy suddenly shifted, and countless wondrous insights surfaced in my mind. It felt as though the gods themselves aided me, and I broke through in one stroke. So that was it. Li Xiaowei and Li Minggong exchanged glances and immediately understood. It must have been caused by the transformation of Jiangnan's spiritual energy. Such a chance might not appear once in decades. Truly a wondrous destiny. Li Minggong sighed with emotion, and Li Xiaowei also spoke with deep feeling. In the Tao of cultivation, destiny and fortune must never be underestimated. Li Xiaowei sighed once more, then his expression softened into a smile as he said, since uncle has successfully broken through, it is naturally a great joy for the family. Aunt Minggong, you no longer need to remain here to guard the household. It is time to head to Jiangbei. But first, uncle should pay respects to the elders, report this joyous news, and take charge of the kingdom matters. That is only proper. Li Chenghui nodded thoughtfully, then immediately excused himself to pay respects to Li Xuanxuan. Meanwhile, Li Xiaowei took out letter paper and began writing with bold strokes. We must also send a letter to the family, so the elders may know of this great joy. Li Minggong waited at his side until an old man approached. His head was bare and his beard completely white, yet his frame remained robust. And Zhayan was now nearing 170 years of age. He had grown gentle in his old age. Bowing, he said, Family head, I have a report from Zhaijing Mountain. The Taoist master has already left with Ding Weizeng, their whereabouts unknown, and Zhayan was one of the most senior retainers of the Li family. Li Xiaowei nodded to him, then turned toward Li Minggong. Aunt, let us first make a trip to Jiangbei, great-grandfather. There is no need to see me off. When Li Chenghui walked out of the hall, Li Xuanxuan was still cheerfully holding his hand, escorting him all the way to the front. The elder's face was flushed and youthful again, having witnessed so many joyous events one after another. He refused to let go of Chenghui's hand. Huger, your father was always the most sensible among the four brothers. Now that you have reached the foundation establishment realm, he must be overjoyed. Li Xuanxuan could not stop murmuring, while Li Chenghui listened silently. Then the old man pulled him aside, drew a brocade box from his robe, and spoke softly. Huger, when Ziming attained his divine ability, your parents came back to visit. Xior also paid his respects to me. Only you were still in seclusion and missed it, so they met only with Zhuluo. They spoke warmly and left him many spirit items. Your father left an artifact with me, the Upper Feather Night Robe. Supreme Shaman Dharma artifacts are far too rare. He searched for years to obtain it. He said if you succeeded in breaking through, it was to be yours. If not, it would go to Zhuluo. Li Chenghui cast a sidelong glance at it and exhaled. Li Xuanxuan continued, your mother also came quietly and left something for you. It's a night ghost secret talisman, a treasured heirloom of the Yang family. I do not know its use, but I kept it for you. Both items were inside the brocade box. Li Chenghui accepted it in silence, while Li Xuanxuan looked on with heartache and said, your father could hardly protect himself these past years and seldom spoke of such things. Your mother, being of the Yang family's direct line, had many constraints in her actions. Do not blame them. Now that Ziming has broken through and is also the master of the Jiushan Pavilion, he finally has the chance to provide for you, though it is not easy for him to say it outright. Li Chenghui shook his head and said, I, Chenghui, never cultivated for the sake of such Dharma artifacts. Li Xuanxuan only patted his shoulder with a smile and replied, there is nothing that cannot be spoken between father and son. Look at me, I lost my father at birth, my mother in my youth, and my son in middle age. Now in old age, I guard the tombs of my descendants. Even your uncle Zyming, though he reached the Purple Mansion realm, still carries such regrets. Cherish what you have. Now you and your father are both at Foundation Establishment realm. Ordinary people could only dream of such fortune. First, go and see to the affairs of Kingdu. After some time, make a trip to the Azure Pond sect. Li Chenghui tucked the brocade box into his sleeve, gave a strained farewell, composed himself, and quietly rode the wind across the lake. He recalled the words of Li Xuanxuan and Li Zhaowei, a faint tension rising in his heart. Best to check on the Kingdu matters first. It seems Zhuliuo has not managed them well. Not daring to be careless, he immediately turned toward Kingdu. Once he passed through the formation, he saw the flickering of lamps in the hall from afar, and faintly heard the sounds of ink grinding and pages turning. Li Chenghui knocked softly on the door. From inside, a clear voice called, "Is that my younger clansman? Please come in." Chapter 1048, The Change in Spiritual Aura. Father. Li Zhuliuo had just lifted his head from the desk when he saw the man at the door. Shock and joy filled him. He quickly stepped down from the main seat to greet him, crying out in delight, "Father, you have come out of seclusion." Li Chenghui nodded with a smile. Overjoyed, Li Zhuliuo eagerly pulled him over to the main seat, his face flushed with excitement as he said, "Congratulations, father. Congratulations, father." Two blessings had come to Li Zhuliuo at once, and he completely forgot his earlier worries, saying only, "Father, you have attained the immortal foundation, and it is 4th grade besides. With grandfather's Dharma robe left behind for you, you will surely soar like a great rock straight into the heavens." Li Zhuliuo well understood the tensions between his father and his grandfather, yet after meeting Li Zijai this time, he had been captivated by his grandfather's bear. Not only did he feel pride in it, he even secretly took him as a model to follow, so he hastened to speak words of praise. But Li Chenghui was not distracted. He seized on his son's earlier words and asked, "A clansman? Which clansman?" Li Zhuliuo had no choice but to bow and answer, "It concerns Qiwen. Someone in the prefecture has accused her, saying her brother used his position to profit. Bring it here, let me see." Li Chenghui took the letter from his hand. After only 2 glances, he saw both sides involved were merchant fleets. He flipped through the supporting documents Li Zhuliuo had prepared, then laughed in anger and slapped them down on the desk with a resounding smack. "Utter nonsense. This is called profiteering by power." "That is called profiteering by power. By that logic, we might as well lock every cultivator's family in the formation and raise them like pigs on 2 legs. Li Zhuliuo had rarely seen his father so furious. He quickly replied, "Father, this matter isn't so simple. If I were to suppress it too easily, it would only serve as proof against her and end up harming Qiwen instead. Of course I know it's more than that." Li Chenghui sneered coldly, "What do they say behind our backs? That Qiwen advanced by sheer luck, just because a great figure happened to pass by the island. Those jealous of her could line up around the lake twice over. Instead of cultivating properly, they only stir up trouble." Li Zhuliuo dared not speak further, and Li Chenghui only said, "Bring him in." Li Zhuliuo had no choice but to send someone to summon the cultivator who had lodged the complaint. Soon footsteps echoed from afar, and a middle-aged man in fine clothes entered. On seeing Li Zhuliuo, he bowed and said with a smile, "Greetings, my lord." But his father still sat silently behind him and said nothing. That falsely familiar tone made Li Zhuliuo's back stiffen. He quickly stepped aside without a word. The middle-aged man froze, only then noticing that Li Chenghui was seated at the main seat. How could he fail to recognize him? A flash of horror passed through his heart. He's advanced to the Foundation Establishment realm. "Li Dongdi greets you, my lord, so it is you." Li Chenghui narrowed his eyes, recognizing the man as a fairly close collateral relative. He spoke casually, "I heard that several of Li Qiwen's brothers have been throwing their weight around. Is that true?" Though Li Zhuliuo was clever, he was still young and could not match Li Chenghui's seasoned sharpness. Yet now, there was no room to retreat. Li Dongdi understood well that at worst, sticking to his accusation would only earn him punishment, but showing weakness now would mean certain ruin, so he cried out miserably, "It is true." Li Zhuliuo watched from the side and saw his father dip a finger in ink, moving it with near-invisible speed to inscribe a talisman upon the paper. The moment Dongdi's words rang out, there was a muffled boom. The paper suddenly flared with dazzling fire and burned to ash. Li Chenghui said in a cold voice, "How dare you?" With a single step, he closed the distance and slapped the man across the face. Li Dongdi's head snapped back, blood and teeth spraying across the floor. Li Chenghui backhanded him on the other cheek, sending him flying a great distance. Li Zhuluo shuddered in fear, worried his father might kill the man, and cried out quickly, "Father, father, careful, you'll hurt your hand." Li Dongdi tumbled across the floor several times before finally landing. It took him a long moment to recover, after which he groveled on the ground, mumbling incoherently, my lord, to mete out justice like this. What reason is there? What reason?" Li Chenghui flicked his sleeve and said casually, "There's no need to pretend anymore. My immortal foundation can discern truth from falsehood." He paused, then sneered, "You and that pack of creatures skulking behind you, just wait for the calamity that's coming." The Azure Pond sect. The cave residence at the summit of Mount Azure Pond faced east. Sunlight and moonlight gathered around it, white clouds drifted endlessly, and it was the place of densest spiritual qi across the mountain range. The white mist could condense into spirit water at any moment, forming dewdrops on the plants and trees. Li Ziming waited a few seconds on the immortal peak before hearing a burst of laughter. An spirited and vigorous elder in blue robes appeared at the mountain gate, holding a golden talisman in his hand. He laughed as he spoke. "I was wondering which honored guest had come, so it's Zheajing." That Li Ziming's first visit outside the mountain was to him, and not Xiao shooting undoubtedly brought Yuan Ziu great pride. He felt pleased in his heart. He had already noticed Li Ziming waiting at the mountain with the courtesy of a disciple from afar, and he raised his chin, rare laughter coming to his lips. Li Ziming responded with a smile. When Yuan Ziu came closer, and others could no longer hear, Li Ziming cupped his hands and said, "This junior greets the Taoist master." It was thanks to fellow Taoist Si Yuanli, who ordered the interception of the devil cultivators, securing the north of Yue state, that allowed me to break through in peace. I am deeply grateful. Yuan Ziu quickly waved his hand to stop him and laughed in his weathered voice. "Why speak so politely, fellow Taoist? Yuanli is your junior, there's no need for such courtesy. As for what happened on the river, it was Li Xuanfeng who turned the tide. Yuanli merely did his duty. Yuan Ziu was, after all, an old fox." Li Ziming was only glad he had spoken after drawing close, lowering his voice. The elder then said, "Please." The two Purple Mansion realm cultivators proceeded into the cave dwelling. Inside, spiritual qi had condensed into droplets, and there was a great pool of pristine water gleaming like a vast gem. A powerful surge of pristine water mana rushed outward, leaving Ding Weizeng, standing behind Li Ziming, visibly uncomfortable. 6 magnificent jade thrones, carved from azure jade, stood above the pristine water pool. The dense spiritual energy mingled with Dharma light until it was almost solidified into shimmering rainbow brilliance, illuminating the entire cave dwelling in radiant splendor. How many pristine water Purple Mansion realm breakthroughs had taken place in this hall was unknown. Si Boxiu gestured with a please, but did not take the main seat. Instead, he sat at the side in the highest position. Li Ziming used his divine ability to shield Ding Weizeng from the pristine water radiance and then sat on the jade throne below. Just as he was about to speak, he suddenly faltered slightly. Yuan Ziu, seated above, also paused, then sneered coldly. "Qing Tangyan of Mount Chenghui has fallen." That old fool was miserly even unto death. He couldn't even bear to invite anyone to witness his Golden Core realm breakthrough, the old ghost. Li Ziming instantly understood. The heavenly light at his brow shifted faintly as he exclaimed in surprise, "The spiritual aura has changed, far too soon. It should be the peak of upper evil spirit storage right now." The smile on Yuan Ziu's face quickly faded, replaced once more by solemnity. He shook his head and said, "It can hardly be called early anymore. Zheajing, have you noticed? Upper evil spirit storage has grown so feeble it is hardly recognizable. Forget devil cultivators, even special spirit items and spirit lands have ceased to emerge. I've been in seclusion every day, never leaving my chambers. How would I know any of this?" Li Ziming muttered inwardly, but outwardly kept a faint smile, nodding lightly as the heavenly light shimmered at his brow, replying, "Indeed." Chapter 1049, Yuan Ziu's Intent Eyes. Li Ziming responded, while Ding Weizeng kept his head low behind him. Every word was a chance for fortune when two Purple Mansion realm cultivators were conversing. He was secretly astonished in his heart. Taoist Master Zheajing has only just broken through to the Purple Mansion realm, while Taoist Master Yuan Ziu, a great cultivator of Jiangnan, is already at the late stage. Yet he's showing such courtesy. He did not understand the matters of the Purple Mansion realm cultivators or the mysteries of lifespan, only that he must not overthink. So he calmed his mind and listened carefully. Si Boxiu glanced at him and spoke. The weakening of upper evil spirit storage had its cause. First in Jiangnan, when Zaipai fell a few years ago, Kan Zuyu was the great achiever of the purple essence. Zheajing, do you know the Tao name of the metallic essence of purple essence? I would like to hear it in detail. Li Ziming answered with a smile. Yuan Ziyu replied with a solemn expression. Its full name is Heavenly Cultivation Purple Qi Immortal Origin Metallic Essence. Li Ziming inferred much once he heard the name. As expected, Si Boxiu continued. She broke through in a single night and perished, so the effect on the spiritual aura of upper evil spirit storage can be well imagined. You only needed to see the word immortal. Since she was a great achiever, the fact that the upper evil spirit storage did not immediately dissipate was already counted as leniency, credited to the excessive damage from Kai Jian's reign. The origin of upper evil spirit storage was the turning point for the Yuan family's decline from its former glory. Their ancestor, Yuan Licheng, failed to break through the Purple Mansion realm and perished in one night, bringing rain across several prefectures. The Azure Ponsec then secretly maintained the rainfall, disrupting the profound balance atmosphere. It was a shameful act. Yuan Ziyu casually brought it up, exposing the disgrace and shifting the blame onto Kai Jian. From the perspective of the Kai family, Li Ziming immediately followed up. The rains were unending, and all beings wailed at that time. My aunt also failed her breakthrough and perished in that rain. She was a member of the Zhao family. In truth, when the Li family investigated later, the rain had not harmed mortals as greatly as imagined. Instead, it had affected cultivators more, and it was far from reaching the point of excessive damage. Yet neither of the two cared about the truth. Yuan Ziyu smiled. Now that the miser is dead, Wu State has become peaceful and Jiangnan has changed. By the look of it, this is the dwelling heart that charges profundity, benefiting antiquity, immortal Tao, secluded cultivation, and the skillful forging of Dharma artifacts. It can suppress spiritual sense, weaken earth, suppress demons, greatly enhance fire virtue mana, and harmonize with the 12 essences of clarity. The Si family's heritage was extraordinary. Li Xuanfeng had left behind records connecting them to the great northern family, the Sima family. It was already impressive for an ordinary person to recognize this much. Even immortal sects at most knew the first part, but could never recite so many details. When Li Ziming heard the many descriptions of the dwelling heart that charges profundity, his heart sank as he thought, of all things, it turned out to be earth virtue. Truly ill fortune. Changxi's profound peak Tao lineage was also earth virtue. Now with the suppression of earth and demons, the chances of those three foundation establishment realm cultivators breaking through in seclusion have diminished even further. If his own side were to lend aid, they naturally wished for profound peak to break through to the Purple Mansion. But as it stood, the heavens gave them no support. Li Ziming did not believe that the dwelling heart that charges profundity was aimed deliberately at the Kong family. After all, this spiritual aura had been shaken by the deaths of Taoist Master Zaipai and Qing Tangyan of Mount Changhui. Changxi was likely not even considered a relevant figure in the face of those two, let alone someone whose death was calculated into the design. Li Ziming nodded in thanks, but Si Boxiu secretly observed him and said, "In the past, when I was in seclusion, Si Yuanli managed the sect. I heard Li Zijai rendered great assistance, and his merits were considerable. I have not yet met him since leaving seclusion. I have only heard that the Yuan family tried to harm him several times. Is this true?" The question was abrupt. Li Ziming had not expected it to sound like an attempt to settle accounts with the Yuan family, but since Yuan Chengzhou was now the Si family's loyal dog, he only smiled and said, "Not really. Those were all schemes of Kai Jian. The Yuan family itself was innocent. They were on good terms with my family in earlier years." Although Li Ziming spent his days cultivating at home, his childhood education had been given according to the standards of a family head. Though he could not compare with Zhao Shooting or Si Boxiu, he would not stumble on matters like this, and words of evasion came smoothly to his lips. Later, some unpleasantness arose over marriage ties. People below us are fond of gossip, and they add or remove details according to their liking when passing stories around. Such things are common. Li Ziming shifted the blame cleanly. Si Boxiu nodded in approval at his tact. The discord between the Yuan and Li families served well as a barrier under Moongaze Lake. He simply said, "The ancestors of the Yuan family were extraordinary, beyond even my sight. Zheajing, do not lower yourself to quarrel with them." Li Ziming could not tell whether this was a threat or the truth. In any case, the Yuan family was bound to remain, and that was consensus enough. Then Yuan Ziyu smiled and said, "Zheajing, you hide deeply. Truly, the younger generation is to be feared." Si Yuanli is now in seclusion and could not meet you, but with no main authority within the sect, and since Tantaijin joined the Azure Pond sect halfway and cannot command respect, after all considerations, only Zijai remains suitable. Yuan Ziyu smiled slightly. Why not let Zijai become the sect master? It would win the people's respect and show the fairness of our sect. Absolutely not. Li Ziming did not want Li Zijai to become sect master. A man's background determined the matters he should handle. It might sound impressive for Li Zijai to take the seat, but swallowing that meat would mean the Li family falling under the Azure Pond sect while also cleaning up after the Si family. He would never allow it. With a heavy voice he said, "Senior, my family has never harbored thoughts of the Azure Pond sect's authority. My elder brother is not suited to be a sect master. This must not be. Zheujing, do not be so quick to refuse." Yuan Ziyu spoke slowly and unhurriedly, leaving aside other benefits. The main seat of the Azure Pond sect grants access to the pristine Gui pool, where a moon-glazed tree grows within. Eating its fruit provides guidance in myriad arts and often adds chances to break through to the Purple Mansion realm. He stroked his beard and continued, "You know my time is limited. Though not as urgent as Changxi's, it grows shorter with each day. If Zijai is willing to sit as sect master, then the spiritual fruit will naturally include a portion for the Li family. As for the Azure Pond sect's Purple Mansion realm spirit items and spirit artifacts, none will be withheld from you, Zheujing. When I fall, they can all be handed to the Li family." Yuan Ziyu smiled warmly as he said, "Your esteemed family is of the sword immortal line. Zheujing, do you not wish to see the spirit sword, the frosty absolute sword? It lies at the bottom of the pool. I also know that the Bai capital Immortal Dao and the Chengxiao Gate have conflicts with your esteemed family. If you agree to this, Zheujing, I will immediately act to mediate between the three sides and ensure everything is arranged properly." Moon-glazed tree. Li Ziming fell silent for a moment before cupping his hands and saying, "Senior, you worry too much. My family has always shown respect to the upper sect and would never dare such ambition. The Purple Mansion realm is rare enough, and treasures like this should be left for Si Yuanli. Purple Mansion realm spirit items are too rare to come by, and the Frosty Absolute Sword is even a spirit sword. The Li family dares not covet them. Moreover, with Taoist Master Suiguan presiding above, all should be decided by his wisdom. Would Si Boxiu really show such kindness?" That old fox had cultivated cunning to perfection. Li Ziming would never believe it. With Kai Buzi outside and Suiguan's whereabouts unknown, could the Azure Pond sect truly be decided by Si Boxiu alone? Taoist Master Yuan Ziyu was refused, but he showed no anger. He casually poured himself tea and sipped it, saying, "Then so be it. I will trouble you, Zheujing, to keep watch over the north on behalf of the Azure Pond sect. If Yihui presses you too hard and you cannot resist, you may call upon the sect for aid. Everything I promised before will hold true." It is but a matter of one word. If I had agreed, I would not only need to meet Suiguan but might even have to enter the pristine Yu heaven again. What one-word matter is that? Chapter 1050, Yuan Ziyu's intent, II. No matter how fine Si Boxiu's words sounded, Li Ziming treated them as nothing but wind past his ears. The old man saw he was unmoved but did not mind. Instead, he looked at Ding Weizeng behind him and asked with a smile, "And this one, Zheujing?" Li Ziming had been waiting for the question, so he answered with a smile, "This is a newly recruited guest cultivator of my family. Unfortunately, he was injured by the Mifan 3 sects and suffered damage to his Kiha. Although my bright Yang divine ability can give rise to all things, it does not belong to a Dao lineage skilled in healing, so I thought I might as well ask you while I am here." Si Boxiu was a great cultivator of the wood virtue, and already at the late stage of the Purple Mansion. He was likely the only one of his kind in the entirety of Yue State. Li Ziming was not one to hold up a facade. If there was a benefit, he would not let it go to waste. Since he was here, he might as well ask Si Boxiu. It was a small matter. Damage to the Kihai was almost a death sentence for members of esteemed families, but it was nothing serious for Purple Mansion realm cultivators. Si Boxiu nodded and smiled at the words. In the way of healing, the foremost is valley water, followed by pristine water and horn wood. The Dao lineage I practice is the most unusual among the wood virtue, called orthodox wood. It is the wood formed by the union of Jie and Yi, as firm as stone, nearly akin to metal, and does not bring forth growth. Li Ziming nodded slightly. Si Boxiu's meaning was that his orthodox wood was an anomaly within wood virtue. Its healing ability was no better than his own. No wonder Si Yuanli's sword art was ethereal and showed no trace of wood virtue. It turned out that their Dao lineage, orthodox wood, was as firm as stone and akin to metal. His sword is a weapon of metal meant to kill. As his thoughts stirred, Si Boxiu smiled and said, "If you wish, you can take a trip to the Eastern Sea. Long Flow Mountain rises near Beisi. It is where Taoist nun Xiangchun practices valley water. She is kind-hearted and may be willing to help." This matter did not warrant asking a Purple Mansion cultivator to intervene directly. Li Ziming frowned inwardly, but Si Boxiu read his expression and simply smiled. "I almost forgot the bond between the Xiao and Li families. You could ask Xiao Shooting as well. He practices pit water and may be able to help." Li Ziming felt a weight lift from his heart. After exchanging a few more words with Si Boxiu, he finally heard him speak softly. "Zheajing, since you came to see me first, I will speak plainly. Hengzhu Dao Gate has grievances with the Chengxiao Gate, so they favor you. But the Golden Feather sect is watching Hengzhu Dao Gate closely. In the past, I also quarreled a lot with Hengzhu Dao Gate. Now that I am older, I see it more lightly. But still." Yuan Ziyu paused, then said casually, "No matter who the Li family allies with, you must not draw too close to Hengzhu Dao Gate. It would be dangerous." Clearly, Li Ziming's visits to these three were meant to establish factional ties. Every Purple Mansion realm cultivator was shrewd. Having chosen to approach Si Boxiu, he absolutely could not then go to Hengzhu Dao Gate, or else he would end up an enemy to all. But the Azure Pond sect cannot be avoided. Si Boxiu, nearing the end of his lifespan, was already sensitive. Jianbei teemed with crises, and without a stable ally at his back, it would be impossible. Li Ziming felt helpless in his heart. Hengzhu Dao Gate was at odds with the Golden Feather sect, and could not get along with the Azure Pond sect either. Who would dare approach them? Moongaze Lake sits right between that poisonous flood dragon Golden Feather sect and the sick tiger Azure Pond sect. "I understand, Senior," Li Ziming replied solemnly and took his leave. Yuan Ziyu rose to see him off. Once he stepped out of the pristine gooey pool, he felt his entire body lighten as the heavens and earth grew clear. He departed from the Azure Pond sect and took his leave, vanishing into the great void. Yuan Ziyu escorted him all the way out before returning to Mount Azure Pond. Stroking his beard slowly, he pondered, "The next is Xiao Shooting. I wonder if that fellow will agree to meet him." Li Ziming speaks well enough, has good fortune, and is not foolish, but he is simply too young. Great void. Li Ziming had just left Mount Azure Pond. Instead of heading straight toward the Xiao family's grand formation, he moved through the great void, following the flow of spiritual energy until he stopped before Mount Xianyu. This kind of visit was different from a private one. He could not simply step out of the great void and enter. When he had visited the Azure Pond sect, he had entered through the mountain gate, which already carried the implication of alliance between the two families. If that was the case with the Azure Pond sect, then he needed to do the same with the Xiao family. What kind of figure is Hengzhu? How did things reach this stage? I have never heard of him being close to any family, yet he somehow managed to offend so many. The thought made Li Ziming recall something. When Murongzia came south all those years ago and devoured Hengzhu Dao Gate's Purple Mansion realm direct disciple, I only thought that monk was arrogant. But perhaps the signs of Hengzhu's predicament were already there back then. The 3 sects and 7 gates had always stood aloof, yet only after reaching the Purple Mansion realm did he realize that there was just as much exclusion within. As he pondered this, a figure approached before the mountain, dressed in a long robe. He held his hands together in a clasped fist salute and said, "I, Xiao Ruyu of the Xiao family, greet Taoist master." The man appeared middle-aged, his face wreathed in polite smiles. His demeanor was smooth and worldly. Li Ziming had heard his name before and knew he had ties with his own father's generation. He waved his hand and said, "So it's Master Ruyu." Back in the day, Xiao Ruyu had also been one of the leading figures of the Xiao family. Later, he seemed to have made some mistake and had been sidelined for decades, relegated to guarding the market without further involvement. His ties with the Li family had gradually faded. The traces of youthful vigor he had once displayed when he pursued the Golden Tang Gate alongside Li Xuanfeng were long gone from his face. Only the deep wear of time remained. The life of this once chivalrous young man had not gone smoothly. He had endured hardships different from those of Li Xuanfeng, and his fiery temper had been worn down into cautious smoothness. He lowered his head and said respectfully, "It should have been my family uncle Xiao Yongling who came to welcome you, but he entered seclusion years ago to attempt a breakthrough to the Purple Mansion realm, so I could only come in his stead. I beg your forgiveness." So Xiao Yongling went into seclusion to attempt the Purple Mansion realm breakthrough. Li Ziming was taken aback and pondered for a moment before asking, If I recall correctly, he cultivates the Eastern Feather Mountain Dao, does he not? Which Dao lineage does that belong to? If anyone else had asked, it would have seemed like prying into another's Dao lineage, but for a Purple Mansion Realm cultivator, such a question was merely an expression of concern. Xiao Ruyu replied respectfully, reporting to Taoist Master, my clan uncle cultivates a Dao lineage known as the Capital Guard among the ancient merging Daos. It vanished from the lands of Yue State long ago, and it was by chance that our family's Taoist master obtained it. This was the first time Li Ziming had ever heard of such a Dao lineage. He silently kept it in mind. It was not convenient to probe further in public. Following Xiao Ruyu up the mountain, they finally arrived at the formation before the main peak. At that point, Xiao Ruyu spoke respectfully. I must ask this Taoist friend to wait outside. He was naturally referring to Ding Weizeng. The man hesitated slightly and glanced at Li Ziming. Li Ziming's heart stirred, and he immediately sensed that something was wrong. If it were not for Xiao Shooting's explicit orders, Xiao Ruyu would never dare stop him. What could this mean? Chapter 1051, The Beginning of the Immortal Family I. Li Ziming waved his hand. Weizeng, I have important matters to discuss with the Taoist master. Wait at the foot of the mountain. Naturally, Ding Weizeng agreed and followed Xiao Ruyu down. Though the man was formidable, his reputation was limited to Jiangbei. He had never seen much of the greater world and behaved very cautiously in front of the Xiao family. Li Ziming ascended to the main peak of Xianyu, arriving once more at the deep pool. This time, no snow covered the summit. The stones were clear and well-defined, with a serene and delightful scenery. By the poolside, the old man was not fishing but seated and drinking tea. Zheajing greets the Taoist master. Li Ziming paid his respects and stood before the table. Xiao Shooting still carried that same unhurried air as he said, there is no need for formality. This formal visit was unlike his previous attempt to build ties. A pot of pale yellow high-grade tea rested on Xiao Shooting's table, rippling with spiritual energy. Li Ziming took a small sip. Though it offered little benefit to a Purple Mansion Realm cultivator, its fragrance was rich and lingering. Li Ziming paused slightly and spoke in a quiet voice, Senior, this Jiangbei cultivator who practices the Hengzhu Dao lineage, does he harbor any hidden schemes? When Xiao Shooting refused to let Ding Weizeng ascend the mountain, Li Ziming's first thought was that something was amiss. Doubt stirred in his heart, yet the old man shook his head and said hoarsely, was this man pushed forward by Si Boxu? Li Ziming seemed to grasp something and immediately recounted what had just happened. Xiao Shooting chuckled softly and replied, he doubts my mastery of divine abilities and wants to test whether I have truly cultivated the art of holding the ridge. So he first put Taoist Xiangchun forward, knowing you would avoid trouble, then mentioned me afterward. That way, it would not seem deliberate. The pit water Dao teaches that holding the ridge is pit water dwelling within the ridge. Water depends on its source. So long as there is a source, it can be drawn endlessly. Thus, it possesses the ability to heal and restore injuries, and it can be used to treat your guest cultivators. He only needs to see your guest cultivator recover from their injuries and walk out of Xianyu Peak. Then it would most certainly prove that I, Xiao Shooting, have indeed mastered holding the ridge. I lack knowledge of divine abilities and nearly spoiled matters. Li Ziming offered an apologetic remark and thanked him for the guidance. Xiao Shooting had no need to explain so much. A single excuse would have sufficed. By clarifying all this, it was evident that he was intentionally teaching him. Li Ziming's heart sank, and he frowned as he said, I wonder if Taoist Master Yuan Ziu acted according to circumstances, or could Ding Weizeng have been driven by his life divine ability? Would he truly spare the effort for such a thing? Xiao Shooting answered casually, merely going along with the flow, trying it out in his leisure. Though wood form square is a life divine ability, it is not meant to manipulate situations. That man is arrogant and has no mind for such things. Clearly, he had dealt with such minor tricks countless times over the years, so they were hardly worth mentioning. He continued, as for Changxi's matter, I see you've agreed to it. Do you know the general outline of the Radiant Sky Stone affair back then? When he brought up the Kong family, Li Ziming replied, I know a little, but I ask for your guidance. Li Ziming knew the general outline of the Radiant Sky Stone affair. The Kong family had merely provided information without taking action, but he listened as Xiao Shooting slowly explained. Chalong Jian refused to take sides for many years. Then after breaking through to the Purple Mansion realm, he secluded himself for an extended period, seeing no one. Clearly, he meant to remain aloof. Since he had made his name in Yue State, such conduct naturally drew many cold looks. The Radiant Sky Stone affair was meant to force Chalong Jian to step into the game. Li Zijian was lured to Crimson Reef Island to compel Chalong Jian to choose between returning a spirit artifact to Crimson Reef or siding with Hangzhou Dao Gate. He refused to choose, and Li Zijian died as a result. When Li Ziming remained silent, Xiao shooting continued. As for what role the Kong family played in this, it is hard to say. Changxi was shunned in Jiangnan. He naturally would not have let a chance to stir the waters and curry favor with various sects slip. Moreover, given Chalong Jian's temperament, even if he could not save Li Zijian, the Radiant Sky Stone might still have fallen into your family's hands. He had some ties with Crimson Reef Island. It would not be impossible for him to attempt a solution that satisfied both sides. Though Xiao shooting said it was hard to say, his meaning was clear. Changxi's interference was a crucial push. On one hand, he had helped Crimson Reef draw Chalong Jian in. On the other, he let the Li family obtain the Radiant Sky Stone. It may well be that the Radiant Sky Stone was the reward Crimson Reef promised Profound Peak Gate for drawing Chalong Jian into action. Changxi meddled in it, and in the end, it became the reward given to my family. Li Ziming understood in his heart that the Li family might never have acted to seize the Radiant Sky Stone without the information from Profound Peak Gate. It was precisely because of the ties between the two families that they, following Changxi's suggestion, had persuaded Si Yuanli first, believing the Radiant Sky Stone to be a reward. Only then had they decided to make the attempt. Looking back now, the entire matter had been exceedingly complex. Their own family had merely killed someone, yet the contest of several Purple Mansion realm cultivators had been just beneath the surface. As for Changxiao Gate, who seemed to have gained nothing, what were they truly up to? As he pondered, Xiao shooting sipped his tea and said softly, "Zheijing, have you received anything from Changxi? Now that you know of this matter, how will you deal with it in the future?" Li Ziming remained silent for a while. Changxi's actions back then could not be considered harming his family. At most, he had simply made decisions on their behalf. After all, no matter how one looked at it, exchanging a Foundation Establishment cultivator with no hope of reaching Purple Mansion realm for a Radiant Sky Stone was a great bargain. But my family was only a mortal family back then. How could we have had the right to make our own decisions? Li Zijian's death was something Li Ziming could hardly pursue to the end. At most, he could resent Crimson Reef. Thus, he could not lay much blame in front of Xiao shooting and could only answer, Crimson Reef wanted to plot against Chalong Jian. My family could not have avoided it regardless. Without Profound Peak Gate, harsher methods would have been used. Their enmity with my family meant that my brother Zijian might not have been the only one. This matter was like someone holding a blade to kill me in order to force my elders to act. Taoist Master Changxi only tugged at his sleeve and asked for some compensation. What benefits he gained is one matter. Back then, my family was just a clan. We had no right to pick and choose when Purple Mansion realm cultivators offered support. Whatever he truly thought of Changxi, these words gave him considerable face, and they did not refer only to Changxi alone. It had to be acknowledged that Profound Peak Gate had indeed fanned the flames, yet the Xiao family had remained unmoved. They had even controlled the eastern shore before, depriving the Li family of the right to build a marketplace. They had stood aside without any gesture throughout many upheavals, and now even seemed intent on continuing to stand aside. If Li Ziming spoke ill of Changxi, how would Xiao shooting think of it? Li Ziming kept only one thing in mind: Xianyu Peak was not the Li family. Though he carried a knot of grief over Li Zijian's death, who would truly care? At most, what he needed was just a show of acknowledgement. When he finished speaking, Xiao shooting showed little change in expression. He only gave a slight nod and said in a deep voice, "Zheijing, your ability to see things with such openness is truly rare." His words carried a note of emotion. To achieve the Purple Mansion realm was a glorious feat, and even those with the firmest Dao hearts could not help but feel pride. All the more so now, with Changxi in old age and forced to beg so bitterly. Changing the topic, Xiao shooting smiled and said, "As for your guest cultivator, you may ask Changxi. He has a method." Li Ziming expressed his thanks twice. Their conversation grew more superficial, and it seemed this visit was about to end. Thinking of Si Boxiu's parting words before his departure, Li Ziming asked, "Senior, you alone have supported the Xiao family in Jiangnan. Surely you must have offended the interests of some Purple Mansion realm cultivators. Might there be a Taoist master with whom you have enmity?" He was asking about Xiao shooting's enemies. The old man naturally understood, but he answered lightly, "In Jiangnan, I entangle myself with no one. They would never believe you to be allied with me. There is no need to worry. Go on your way." Chapter 1052, The Beginning of the Immortal Family II, at Moongaze Lake within Vermilion Bud Pavilion. The bluish stone lanterns shone with a hazy glow as they were reflected upon the ink-black waters of the lake. The night was heavy and deep. Li Qian withdrew her technique and stood in the pavilion for a moment. With her own Taoist master breaking through, the bright yang energy over the lake was too intense and its transformations uneven. Cultivating the whole Pill Dao was better in the dead of night, so she had altered her practice hours. Now that her training was finished, the night lay pitch black around her. Big Sister Qian, just as she rested, a flying shuttle skimmed across the lake, carrying someone who then landed before her. It was her younger, distant cousin from the same bloodline, who had been cultivating on the island. Li Kuai was dressed in a pink dress with a round face and dainty ears, looking delicate and endearing. She smiled and said, "Congratulations, sister. The elder brothers have all been released." What? Li Qian had been filled with worry and had half convinced herself that she was going to be summoned to Mount Qingdu. She had not expected such good news, yet her joy flashed by in haste, replaced at once with unease. She asked, how were they interrogated? She understood why Li Zhuliuo had delayed dealing with this matter, and feared all the more that he might recklessly suppress it, which would truly harm her. But Li Kuai only smiled and said, "Sister, do not worry. Great-uncle Chenghui has successfully broken through and now presides over Qingdu." He exposed Li Dongdi's lies with the untraceable presence truth-seeking talisman, and the rumors crumbled on their own. Li Qian's eyes curved with sudden delight as she exclaimed, "Great-uncle has broken through. That is truly wonderful." Li Kuai paused slightly before continuing. Along with that, several dozen people were seized, including outsiders, collateral branches, and even direct descendants. They have now all been confined within Qingdu's water mansion. Li Qian's joy quickly faded. She said gently, "I entered the island and rose to Qingdu as one from the collateral branch, standing alongside the eldest son. Such a matter was bound to stir criticism and jealousy. We must not be too severe, or else the family will fall into chaos, and the fault will become mine instead." Li Kuai froze for a moment. She too was of the first lineage of the major branch, and she shared a close bond with her cousin. She had long felt resentment in her heart. Her delicate brows furrowed as she said, "Sister, you overestimate them. They are nothing but insignificant figures." Li Qian only shook her head. She rose from the pavilion, intending to go pay respects to Li Chenghui at Qingdu, when suddenly a man in black rode the wind over and landed before her. It was Chen Yang. "Greetings, Miss." Chen Yang cupped his hands in salute, and without waiting for Li Qian to speak, said in a deep voice, "The family head summons you. Please come with me into the island." Li Qian dared not delay as she rose on the wind. When they arrived at the hall within the island, she saw two youths waiting outside. One was neatly dressed with ordinary features. The other, however, was bold and valiant in appearance, with thick brows and clad in armor. Both of them bore golden eyes. "Greetings, cousin." Both of them spoke at once, and Li Qian hurriedly nodded in response. The two before her were the second young master Li Jianglong and the third young master Li Jiangxia. They were both younger than her at only 18 or 19 years old, and both practiced the bright yang method. The fourth young master, Li Jiangliang, was still too young, but the two present were both formidable figures. Li Jianglong enjoyed a reputation in the family for being virtuous and magnanimous, while Li Jiangxia had already gained authority. He had been managing the families along the eastern shore only a few days ago, and had only returned because of the Purple Mansion Dharma Assembly. Upon seeing Li Qian, Li Jiangxia laughed heartily. "It has been so many years since I last saw you, cousin. It's a pity that I will likely have to bid farewell to my father and go take charge of the lands east of the riverbank, now that the Zhao family has returned them. I will have few chances to speak with you again." Compared to his elder brother, Li Jiangxia was clearly more cheerful, more striking in demeanor, and harsher in conduct. For that, he was more favored by Li Zhaowei, had risen early, and was entrusted with important duties. Li Jianglong, on the other hand, was more reserved. He inquired after Li Qian's elder brothers, and she answered him quickly. They were soon summoned, and the three of them proceeded into the hall together. The hall was brightly lit. Li Zhaowei was still holding a vermilion brush, marking things on a scroll. The Purple Mansion Dharma Assembly had ended and left behind chaos. He had to record who had sent gifts in return, who had offered congratulations, whether the gifts had been weighty or light, who had failed to attend, and who had left midway. Clearly, it was not something easily managed. When he saw the three approach, Li Zhaowei finally set down his brush. Looking first at Li Qian, he said quietly, "Qian, I heard from Uncle Chenghui that the family's affairs have been settled." In the coming days, your brothers will be sent to Mount Qingdu to do some work under the elder on Talisman Peak. It will help ease his boredom. The elder naturally referred to Li Xuanxuan. After this ordeal, her brother's businesses were ruined even if they had been released from Qingdu, so such an arrangement was already quite suitable. Li Qian respectfully replied, "Many thanks, family head." Li Xiaowei nodded. There has always been gossip in the family. The struggles for power in the 16 prefectures are always talked about one way or another. You need only cultivate well at Vermilion Bud Pavilion. Li Qian quickly agreed. Li Xiaowei then turned to his two sons, handed over a jade pendant, and instructed, Jiangxia, the Zhao family has relinquished 79 households east of the riverbank. Take this order to Qingdu, obtain the immortal registry, appoint a few peak guardians, estate stewards, and guest cultivators, then make a trip and put everything in order. Yes. Li Jiangxia's eyes lit up at once, eager to act, while his elder brother Li Jianglong only lowered his head in silence. Li Xiaowei picked up his brush again without lifting his head and asked, "Do you have any thoughts?" Without even thinking, Li Jiangxia respectfully replied, "I have long thought of it. Apart from the offerings, first station the guards in the eastern shore, forbid consuming blood qi and rice meat, and consolidate the households. Then open a marketplace for trade, and establish a palace in Milan Prefecture to govern the 118 households on the eastern shore. Every 5 years, let the 118 households each send 24 people to cultivate at Milan Mountain. Their treatment will be tied to the family. Those who succeed in cultivation will serve as stewards of our estate or as guest cultivators. Those who fail will return to their families to manage affairs." Li Xiaowei paused his brush and asked casually, "And if they do not wish to stay?" Li Jiangxia frowned and answered, "Then let them return to manage their own families." Li Xiaowei glanced at Li Jianglong, who stood quietly to the side, and said, "Jianglong, let us hear your thoughts." Li Jianglong saluted respectfully and said, "Family head, in my opinion, third brother is right. Milan Prefecture lies empty and is suited to shelter the talents of each household. It is only that the wording should be more agreeable. Once they attain the qi cultivation realm at Milan Prefecture, they should be considered free. They may choose to remain in the family, stay in the mountain, return to their own homes, or venture out into the wider world." Li Jiangxia understood at once and laughed. "I was lacking in consideration. Brother's way of putting it does sound much better. How could the meager and narrow land of those 118 households possibly support cultivators in qi cultivation realm? At most, a family head was the limit of their strength. Even if they wished to return home, there would be no means to sustain themselves. They would have no choice but to remain by the lake to protect their own kin. Besides, the Li family never restricted lake cultivators from venturing out. They would realize the bitter hardships of rogue life after only a year or two on their own. There was no spiritual energy to cultivate nor any spirit patties to nourish them. They would be forever hiding and wandering in distress. Naturally, they would return when the Li family provided techniques for cultivation. Chapter 1053, Records of Wanyu I. Since it was decided, Li Jiangxia reported to Li Xiaowei and took the talisman. He descended in high spirits to muster the troops bound for the eastern shore. Raising his hand, Li Xiaowei asked, "Longer, Profound Peak Gate has come to seek a marriage alliance. A girl may be married off, and another among your brothers must also be chosen. Excluding your youngest brother Jiangyan, who do you think would be suitable?" Only then did Li Jianglong kneel and speak respectfully. "Father, I believe that the marriage alliance with Profound Peak Gate is nothing more than a gesture of goodwill. The future remains uncertain. It would be better to choose one of my younger brothers and delay the marriage. That way, if something happens later, there will still be room to maneuver, and we will not be placed in an awkward position. As for marrying off a daughter, we must still see how Profound Peak Gate proposes." Li Xiaowei only said, "We cannot evade putting Profound Peak Gate at ease. We must not treat this lightly, for otherwise it will show a lack of sincerity." Li Jianglong bowed again and replied respectfully, "As your direct son, I am willing to go to Profound Peak Gate to cultivate, in order to settle Profound Peak Gate's concerns. As for the marriage, I sincerely hope it can be arranged with one of my younger brothers instead. I am foolish, but I still fear that forcing the matter might breed calamity." Li Jianglong's reasoning was not without merit. If Changxi died, Profound Peak Gate's fate was uncertain. If the worst came to pass and Profound Peak Gate perished, then would the heirs of a direct descendant such as Jianglong or Jiangxia in such a marriage not be burdened with an inherited enmity. On the other hand, Jianglian was still a child. Even if he were betrothed, it would take at least 10 years before marriage could happen. Changxi might be long since perished, and Profound Peak Gate's situation would be clear, sparing them from being entangled too deeply. What did catch Li Xiaowei somewhat off guard was his son's willingness to personally go to Profound Peak Gate to cultivate. Lifting his head, he looked at his third son and said in a deep voice, "After matters at the eastern shore are settled, I had planned to entrust Milin Mountain to you. You would stabilize the 118 households, while your younger brother would take over the eastern shore. Yet you insist on going to Profound Peak Gate yourself. Have you truly thought this through?" His sons were all talented in governance and descendants of Bright Yang bloodline. They each had their own ambitions and factions. Unlike the previous generations, where brothers yielded to one another, even the young Zhongliang harbored no small aspirations. How could Li Xiaowei not be aware of this? Now that prosperity was flourishing, distancing oneself from the center of power could only bring harm and no benefits. Li Zhonglong's sudden wish to leave was truly unexpected. Li Xiaowei asked once more, and Li Zhonglong bowed again and said, "After much thought, I believe that this journey to Profound Peak Gate will bring great benefits to our Moongaze Lake. I beg Father to grant his approval." Good. Li Xiaowei did not give him any chance to waver. He nodded and instructed, "Choose 2 companions to accompany you. I will explain matters to the Taoist master myself. When you arrive at Profound Peak Gate, you must conduct yourself with humility and caution. Do not bring disgrace upon the family's reputation. Please rest assured, Father." After giving his thanks, Li Jianglong withdrew. All the while, Li Qiuan, dressed in a flowing cloud-patterned gown, had been listening quietly from the side. She found her regard for Jianglong growing even more. She did not expect Li Xiaowei to suddenly turn to her. "Wanner, in your view, who should be sent to govern the eastern shore? I dare not speak rashly. It would be improper to overstep the rules." Li Qiuan gave only a brief reply, but Li Xiaowei replied, "Speak freely, it does not matter." She had no choice but to bow and answer. Reporting to the family head, several of the elders must remain to guard the northern bank and cannot be moved lightly. Now that Uncle Chenghui has taken over Qingdu, Uncle Zhuliuo is unoccupied, though his cultivation is of utmost importance. I wonder if this might delay his progress. Uncle Zhuming has just entered the qi cultivation realm a few days ago, and there is also Aunt Xinghan. Both can contribute their strength as well. After the devastating conflict between the northern and southern branches, the Chengming and Zhuing generations had truly withered. Chenghui, Minggong, and Chengbai each had their own assignments. In the Zhuing generation, only Li Zhuliuo's cultivation was decent, while the eldest branch's Li Xinghan was a silent cultivator who rarely showed herself, spending almost every day in seclusion. As for the specifically mentioned Li Zhuming, he was the direct grandson of a Taoist master, yet his innate ability was far from remarkable. Even though he was past 30, he had relied on the 3 aspects breaking realm pill to break through, and his achievements were still inferior to those of the Zhufeng and Zhaoyang brothers. Li Xiaowei sighed inwardly. The talents of the Zhuing generation were sufficient to match those of ordinary families, yet none of them stood out as truly remarkable. Their years of growth had coincided with the internecine conflict between North and South, leaving the Li family in turmoil. Not only did they lack proper training, many had even lost their parents, returning with little more than a storage pouch or 2. Since Uncle Chenghui has already taken charge of Qingdu, it would not be fitting for Zhuliuo to enter Milin again. For now, let the eldest elder oversee it, and have Zhuming and Xinghan follow him to gain experience. Having given his orders, Li Xiaowei finally set down his brush and said softly, "In a few days, I will depart for Jiangbei. Let Kainer take over the family's affairs, and you are to assist him." With Uncle Chenghui present, there should not be much trouble. Li Qiuan bowed respectfully in agreement. Li Xiaowei then drew the talisman of the mountain ghost from his sleeve, placed it in her hand, and said, "This is the mountain ghost talisman. It holds the might of Foundation Establishment Realm. Study it well, and it may also serve as protection." Sword Gate. The Wanyu Sword Gate lay within Jingchuan Prefecture, where hills rose in clusters and vegetation thrived. Its gate stood on Yuchuan Sword Peak, a main summit that jutted into the heavens like a drawn blade. Only 100 kilometers away, the Raising Sword Ferry stretched across the eastern sea, from which the boundless ocean could be seen at a single glance. A singular tree grew atop the sword-sharp summit of Yuchuan Sword Peak, the profound horn-treasured cluster pine. Unlike ordinary pines that thrust straight upward, its trunk spread outward like a grand canopy. Each needle resembled a drooping tassel, shimmering with emerald luster. It was a purple mansion spirit pine aligned with the hornwood Dao, and was famous throughout Jiangnan. The sword gate itself was tranquil and austere, Pavilions stood scattered across the peak, yet there were few figures in sight. Only one man came forward to welcome Li Ziming, Cheng Jinju, the same man who had offered congratulations the other day. Carrying his sword on his back, he led the way up the mountain. A southeastern wind rose, sweeping through the pine branches and scattering dazzling rays of light. The heavenly light between Li Ziming's brows flickered faintly. He sensed that this wind was anything but ordinary. It carried the essence of wood's growth, subtly resonating with the horn wood Tao. He raised his brows and said, "What a marvelous spring breeze of horn wood." The heavenly light at the center of his brows held the power to discern anomalies, and so he perceived the truth with just one glance. Cheng Jinju hurriedly explained, "Taoist master, your divine ability is indeed vast. This wind truly belongs to the hornwood Tao. It is called the treasured cluster spring breeze. Whenever the southeastern winds rise and pass through the branches of our gate's ancestral tree, they immediately transform into this breeze, carrying the power to nourish life and sustain the people. This breeze rises from the southeast and flows toward the northwest, all the way to Lake Xi'an. There it meets the daytime sea wind, shifts westward along with the river waters, and nourishes all of Jiangnan." Oh. Li Ziming let out a quiet sigh. No matter how the devil plague or the blood calamity struck, the Azure Pond sect's population always managed to recover swiftly. This purple mansion spirit tree must have played no small part in it. Just as the thought crossed his mind, a figure appeared beneath the tree. It was a middle-aged man in Taoist robes, his hair half white. He held a sword cradled in his arms. A faint smile lingered on his face, tinged with a trace of surprise as he spoke. "I am Ling Mei. I greet you, Zheajing." "I greet you, senior." Li Ziming returned the courtesy with a bow. The cultivators of Swordgate were formidable in combat, and few dared to offend them. Naturally, his tone was polite. As Taoist master Ling Mei approached, he introduced, "This is Senior Tianjiao." Only then did Li Ziming realize that he was referring to the profound horn-treasured cluster pine before them. He quickly bowed again and said respectfully, "I pay my respects, senior." Chapter 1054, Records of Wanyu II. Li Ziming himself possessed 3 spirit trees. The snake dragon fruit tree and the Wanglin blossom tree had yet to awaken. The last was a spirit persimmon tree he had brought back from Mount Quanwu. Though its foundation was far inferior to the first 2, it had already shown faint signs of awakening. The profound horn-treasured cluster pine gave no response. Ling Mei quickly explained, "The venerable elder often slumbers. It has made no sound for nearly 50 years. Please do not take offense." Li Ziming nodded and simply followed him forward. Taoist master Ling Mei lifted his sleeve with a smile and said, "This elder has an extraordinary origin. Years ago, true monarch Taiyu once cultivated on this mountain. His golden qi soared into the heavens, leaving the land barren for hundreds of kilometers where no grass or trees would grow. Thus he planted this senior to conceal his qi. Later, when our gate's founding master, Cheng Liuxing, entered the true monarch's tutelage, he too had to address this elder as martial uncle. So it was actually planted by true monarch Taiyu." Li Ziming was instantly shaken down to his heart. What kind of figure was true monarch Taiyu? The strength of this ancient tree was certainly unmatched within the Purple Mansion realm. As long as it stood here, who would dare to attack the Sword Gate? Ling Mei was clearly proud as he said, "My Sword Gate's long sword pierces the heavens, its golden qi overwhelming, yet it has never harmed the common folk of Jingchuan Prefecture. That is all thanks to this venerable elder." As he spoke, he drew Li Ziming to sit beneath the tree. The table was covered with pine needles as lustrous as jade tassels. Ling Mei brushed them aside with a wave of his sleeve, poured tea, and said with a smile, "Zheajing's arrival is something I truly did not expect." Li Ziming only smiled and spoke politely. "My forebear was renowned as a sword immortal, and his name is inscribed within the Wanyu sword book of Chenghua Hall. Now that I, Zheajing, have achieved the Purple Mansion realm, it is only natural that I come to pay my respects. Not to mention my family has practiced the sword for generations and shares a Dao lineage bond with Sword Gate. How could I not come?" "Indeed," Ling Mei nodded, looking pleasantly surprised. His face was somewhat square, and his brows and eyes firm, yet his gaze brimmed with admiration as he said, "Our gate's founding master once said that anyone in this world who left their name upon the sword book would forever be an honored guest of our gate. Should matters of life and death arise, they may always seek our aid. Although many years have passed and the founder has already ascended, our sect still regards the sword immortals of the world as friends. It is a pity. By the time we learned of it, the esteemed elder of your family had already been slain." Resentment clouded his face. Li Ziming sighed softly and shook his head as he said, "After all, the affairs of the world cannot be foretold. Ling Mei did not dwell on the past. He shifted the topic and said gently, speaking of which, it seems we are of the same family, Zhejiang. Oh, Li Ziming was slightly taken aback and asked in puzzlement, Senior, do you not bear the surname Cheng? Ling Mei laughed heartily and nodded. My original name is Li Mei. He paused slightly, noticing Li Ziming's expression, then stroked his beard and said, in the Tao of cultivation, when one person achieves the Tao, even his chickens and dogs ascend, bringing blessings to his descendants. The offspring of cultivators inherit extraordinary innate abilities beyond the reach of mortals. Thus, there exists the grace of lineage that extends across generations among the various sects and families, but the innate ability of the sword Tao is not the same. Even the son of a farmer may one day lift a blade weighing 1,000 kilograms, while the scion of a purple mansion realm family may not be able to wield a 1.5-meter sharp sword. At Sword Gate, we revere attainment in the sword above all. It is common for Qi cultivation realm cultivators to become peak masters, and for those at the embryonic breathing realm to be invited as honored guest cultivators. Li Ziming now understood. Ling Mei continued, our sect reveres the righteous Tao, and the direct lines of various surnames are all present. The Cheng family is the legacy of our founder, so they are respected by all. They often travel outside as direct descendants, and thus the position of sect master has always remained firmly in their hands. What a righteous Tao. Unable to restrain himself, Li Ziming offered praise in disbelief, yet Ling Mei sighed with a trace of melancholy, not necessarily. There are flaws as well. One's family must bear its own suffering, and the other sects see this clearly. I may as well speak of it with you, Zhejiang. In our sect, those outstanding in sword cultivation and virtue are held in the highest regard. Yet cultivators are few to begin with, and it is exceedingly rare for someone to possess both qualities, along with exceptional innate ability. Such a figure may not appear even once in 100 years. As a result, those with innate ability were often denied resources, while those of mediocre aptitude enjoyed countless spiritual treasures to advance another step. To obtain such resources, one first had to practice the sword, then descend the mountain to aid the people and prove their virtue. Yet aside from a handful of true prodigies, sword cultivation only deepens with age. By the time many of them attained mastery, they had already missed the prime years for breaking through. Thus, the entire Sword Gate fell into disarray. There were even elders at the embryonic breathing realm who, while living off the sect's resources for a century, perished during their attempt to break through to the Qi cultivation realm. This, Li Ziming frowned. Ling Mei let out another sigh and said, I come from that very era. Later, I broke through to the Purple Mansion realm and took command of the Sword Gate. In the name of the Founder's grace, I vigorously promoted members of the Cheng family and managed to correct part of the situation. I carried out many reforms within the gate, going against much opposition. Only then did figures like Cheng Mianfu, Cheng Gao, and Gu Pang rise into prominence. Even so, most of our Sword Gate's direct descendants still lack sufficient cultivation today, possessing only a single set of sword techniques, or at most, a show of virtue without true strength. The greater troubles that remain, the countless idle mouths draining our resources, can no longer be reckoned clearly. Now Li Ziming finally understood why the mighty Wanyu Sword Gate, inheritor of a sword immortal Tao lineage and scions of a golden core realm cultivator, still could not overcome even Crimson Reef Island or the Chunyi Tao Gate. They had been dragged into disarray in the Eastern Sea, and his heart grew heavier as he said, the righteous Tao is hard to walk. It is fortunate that Senior appeared at such a time. That is not certain. Ling Mei shook his head wryly. I have not yet changed the fundamental rule of choosing leaders by virtue, yet there are already murmurs of resentment within the sect. If I were to touch this foundation, I fear they would all rush together to Chenghua Hall and beseech the ancestral elder to draw the sword book and cut down a heretical disciple like me. How later generations would judge me is still uncertain. Taoist Master Ling Mei was utterly different from Si Boxiu and Zhao Shooting. Perhaps it was because the Li family leaned toward the righteous Tao, and because Sword Gate was a family of sword immortals. His bearing was far more earnest, his cultivation in both sword and virtue lending him a steady tone. In any case, Zhejiang, your visit has truly aided me. At the very least, there are many stubborn elders in the sect who still recognize the Li family. Especially since the celestial moon, Sword revealed his righteous might by slaying wrathful aspect with his own life, and because his name has already been inscribed within Chenghua Hall's sword book, bringing his great renown. For that, I must thank you, Zhejiang. The dignified mid-stage Purple Mansion realm cultivator actually rose from his seat to bow in thanks. Startled, Li Ziming quickly stood to avoid it. Taoist Master Ling Mei spoke modestly. However, our gate has long established rules. Purple Mansion realm cultivators must not interfere in matters of gate rivalry and family conflict. Back then, our venture into Green Pine Temple was solely to retrieve our founder's relic, a deed with rightful cause. Otherwise, we would never have gone. If you, Zheajing, came with other intentions, I fear you will be disappointed. Which Purple Mansion realm cultivator was not shrewd. Though Ling Mei's words were earnest and sincere, he was well aware of the subtleties behind sect interactions. He had laid the matter bare with a single sentence. Li Ziming's visit might not truly be a help to him, yet he had to find a way to acknowledge it without giving offense. The thanks, though solemn and formal, carried an air of righteous propriety. Li Ziming could not argue further. His purpose in coming to Sword Gate had been to avoid choosing between Golden Feather Sect and Hengzhu Dao Gate, and he had never truly expected the Sword Gate to ally with his family. He simply said respectfully, "Senior has misunderstood. This junior has only come to pay respects to the sword intent left by my family's sword immortal. I harbor no other intentions. I only ask for the chance to behold the true face of the Wanyu sword book." Chapter 1055, The Rise and Fall of Worldly Affairs. Taoist Master Ling Mei nodded, asked him to have some tea first, and went to Chenghua Hall to request the text. After quite some time, he returned, cradling a Taoist scripture. The Taoist scripture had a dark blue cover and pale yellow pages. It lay half open in his hands. Even when he walked to the tree, he did not set it on the jade table, but only said, "Zheajing, please look." It was not proper to make him hold it like this. Yet treasures often produce strange phenomena, and placing it on the case might crush it. Li Ziming used his divine ability and reached out with both hands to receive it, but Taoist Master Ling Mei raised a hand and said, "Zheajing, the Wanyu sword book is no ordinary thing. Let me handle it." He smiled and said, "If one bears sword intent, the sword book is as light as brocade, and even an ordinary farmer could tuck it into his bosom and carry it away. Without cultivation in the sword book is as heavy as Mount Taishi, and even one who has achieved Purple Mansion realm would find it hard to lift." Li Ziming returned the smile, then nodded and let his gaze fall on the sword book. Only 6 or 7 thin pages had flipped. A few small words shone. At the top were the words "white pear." The 2 words were Snow White. 2 lines down, another pair of small words surfaced, equally white, Yuxin. After these 2 characters came tiny script that read Liang Yuxin Unified Qi Pure Yang Sword. What followed grew even more complex, a dense array of symbols interspersed with phrases that could not be deciphered. Taoist Master Ling Mei turned the pages with his divine ability, lifting them until the final few leaves, where archaic characters in pale blue were written, Qingchai. Li Ziming took it to be a sword name. A few lines later, the writing turned to ordinary black ink, which read, Yuek. An annotation followed these 2 words, Sword of the Bright Moon and Profound Palace's Autumn Radiance. Li Ziming studied it closely, felt a twinge in his heart, and asked, "What names come after this? Why are these entries not as bright as the earlier ones?" Taoist Master Ling Mei sighed. When a sword intent manifests in this world, it enters the sword book. The later names are the titles of sword intents. If they shine brightly, it means such sword intents still remain in the world. The sword intents sealed by the Li family had long been exhausted, so naturally they had dimmed. Li Ziming offered his salute, while Taoist Master Ling Mei remained silent for a long time before returning the sword book and consoling him. It is often said that a grudge may still be avenged even after 100 years. Yet there are times when there is no place to direct vengeance. To have all that force gathered in one's hand and no way to release it, that is the true hardship. Li Ziming knew he was referring to Kai Wei, who had long since died, and to the Kai family, which was now reduced to a few collateral branches clinging on. The Li family had achieved the Purple Mansion realm, yet there was no one left to exact vengeance upon. He could only speak softly, "Thank you, Senior, for your understanding." In truth, Li Xuanfeng, Li Zijai, and several others had played critical roles in the downfall of the Kai family. Apart from the reclusive Kai Jian, all the direct descendants bearing the surname Kai had perished. That alone was already a form of vengeance. As for Kai Jian, no one knows where he is in seclusion. Most likely, Si Boxiu will never permit him to emerge. The thought flickered through Li Ziming's mind and was gone. He recalled Cheng Gao, a friend of his late uncle Li Yuanjiao, and asked, "Taoist friend, you just mentioned Cheng Gao. He had ties with my family. Where might he be today?" Taoist Master Ling Mei paused for a moment before answering. He is still stationed in Ganzi Prefecture of the Great Western Plains, guarding the small nation of Bailie-Qiang. But Longdi is now rife with devil cultivators, so he cannot move lightly. The Wanyu Sword Gate's mountain gate was in Jiangnan, yet its jurisdiction extended all the way to the northwest of Wu State, bordering Zhao State. Li Ziming had been puzzled for years, so he seized the chance to ask indirectly. Taoist Master Ling Mei answered readily, "This matter traces back to the true monarch. In those years, our forebear sought the Tao and intended to establish his sect at Yuchuan Sword Peak. Yet when he consulted the true monarch, it was denied. The true monarch said, Tao lineages under heaven may shift and transform, but two cannot be altered. The Sword Gate must choose its mountain in Shu, and the shamanic talisman Tao must stretch across the southern borderlands." When our ancestor pressed him further, the true monarch only said it was to let the immortal Lord find it more pleasing to the eye. More pleasing to the eye. Li Ziming frowned in confusion. The immortal Lord's words must have held deeper meaning. Taoist Master Ling Mei continued, "Our ancestor thus founded the gate in Shu. In Jiangnan, we held only Raising Sword Ferry and Sword Peak. At our height, we intimidated all of Longdi and Shu. Later, when the founder fell, our strength waned, and the elder lineage in Jiangnan could not be moved. Slowly, the gate shifted to the spiritually rich Jiangnan. Hence, even today, we retain a foundation in Longdi and Shu." Li Ziming finally understood and thought to himself, "I heard that Wei's Li belonged to the Li family of Longdi before his achievement. If the chance arises, I must visit Longdi. If the Sword Gate has foundations there, I could inquire further then." After a few casual words, he quickly rose to take his leave, but Ling Mei dared not let him depart Yuchuan Sword Peak empty-handed. He produced a jade box from his sleeve that was clearly prepared earlier when retrieving the sword book, and said apologetically, "I have truly wronged you, Zheajing. I have heard that your esteemed family possesses the Wanglin blossom. Please accept this hornwood golden tassel. It is of great benefit to spirit plants. Consider it a return gift from my Sword Gate." Li Ziming could not decline and accepted the jade box. When he left the Sword Peak, he slipped into the Great Void. Only then did he open the box, finding a golden hornwood tassel within. "This is an item of that Taoist Master Tianjiao. It is enough to serve as Purple Mansion realm cultivation resources and is far superior to common treasures." He put the jade box away. At last, he had dealt with all three parties. Though the Sword Gate had been courteous in seeing him off, matters were considered settled. His heart grew much lighter. "I have properly managed the relations with the 3 sects and 7 gates. Next, I can turn my gaze toward Zhongbei, Pingya Island." Li Jiangxia came out of the hall, his armor clinking as he walked. He strode all the way to the outskirts of the island, golden light shimmering beneath his feet. In the middle of the island stood a black horse with crimson eyes and scales on its belly snorting loudly. This horse had been bred from the famed Jiangsuo steeds of Mount Yue and the black-scaled horses of the Great Desert. And Zheyan had spent over 3 years capturing and breeding them, then raised this one to adulthood before sending it to the lake. Li Xiaowei had already reached the Foundation establishment realm by then and no longer needed it, so he gifted it to his most favored son, Li Jiangxia. Just as Li Jiangxia mounted the spirit horse and turned its head, a man stepped out from the left, as if he had been standing there for some time, and shouted past the guards, "Third Highness, Third Highness." Li Jiangxia lowered his gaze, somewhat puzzled. His elder brother Li Jianglong arrived a step behind him, glanced once, then quickly came forward with a smile. "Third brother, you may not know him. He is a concubine-born son of a family brother from the 26th branch, outside the main lineage, given the single name Hun." Chapter 1056, The Rise and Fall of Worldly Affairs. So it's you. Li Jiangxia had spent little time within the family over the years and had no idea who this Hun or anyone else might be. He urged his horse forward, but the 2 guards did not yield, their cold iron spears barring the way. Li Hun, who was older than both of the guards, quickly called out, "Ah, the second young master is here too. This junior greets you." Li Jiangxia took in his thin frame and plain looks, then raised his whip and laughed heartily. "Second brother, this man looks just like you. Truly one of our own kin. Aside from those eyes, the resemblance is uncanny." Li Jiangxia had always carried himself with dragon-like vigor and boundless energy. He was utterly different from Li Jianglong. Yet Li Hun's maternal family was the Chen family, the same as Li Jianglong's, so the resemblance was only natural. Li Jianglong found his words amusing and laughed along. Li Hun dropped to his knees with a thud and exclaimed, "You honor me far too much, uncles. How could this junior have such fortune? It is only that I have come of age and came to the island seeking some work. I did not expect to encounter the Third Highness, and recalling how my father often spoke of you, I became overexcited, still calling him Third Highness. Li Jianglong could tell that he was trying to climb the branch. After all, it was already agreed that his younger brother would be heading east. If Li Hun was here at the hall, his father must at least be a Qi cultivation realm cultivator. Amused, he thought, so he has come to cling to my younger brother. How could Li Jiangxia not see it as well? He burst into loud laughter, pulled his whip back into his hand, and turned his horse's head, saying, "Very well, when I return from the Eastern Bank and have free time, you may come find me for a proper talk." Without waiting for a reply, he spurred his horse and rode off, leaving Li Hun without the time to react. Li Jianglong helped him to his feet and asked, "Family brother, what brings you to the island?" Li Hun answered instinctively. They said guests had come to the island. My father led them into the hall. Several elders also went in to meet the family head. Only then did he realize he should not have spoken. Li Jianglong flung his hand aside and cut him off in surprise, so it was family business. I thought it was visiting relatives, which is why I asked. This should not have been said, not at all. You child, your tongue is loose. From now on, do not wander about the hall. If you stumble into something you should not, beware of King Du's punishment. Li Hun was quickly frightened. Li Jianglong deftly unfastened the command token at Li Hun's waist, locking it in his own palm. His tone grew heavier. "It is fortunate I found you. Better than letting you run about. Come with me to see your father." Without his command token, Li Hun could not go anywhere within the hall. He could only follow blankly, thoughts in disarray, until fear seized him. He hurriedly said, "Second Highness, my father has urgent matters. It is truly not suitable for you to meet him. It does not matter." At the foot of the steps, Li Jianglong paused and turned back with a genial smile, his golden eyes piercing as he said, "I will wait for him in the side hall." Li Hun stood frozen in fright, unable to move for a long while. Li Jianglong gently took his hand and led him through the covered corridor to the side hall. Li Hun nearly collapsed along the way. Li Jianglong had no mind to care about him. He observed quietly and saw a disheveled middle-aged man pass among the guards. His cultivation seemed to be at the late stage of the Qi cultivation realm, but it was hollow, as if built by spirit items. Who could this be? Li Ziming traveled for a while in the Great Void, then broke through into his family's grand formation. He descended into the grand hall on heavenly light. What once took days of flight at the early stage of the Purple Mansion realm now took only half a moment, with scarcely any change in the sky. Li Xiaowei was standing in the hall, arranging over a dozen jade boxes on the table and marking them with a vermilion brush. When he saw Li Ziming appear, he bowed and reported, "Respected Taoist master, the return gifts for the 3 sects and 7 gates are prepared." In Yue State, there were the 3 sects, 7 gates, and 2 families aside from the Li family. Li Ziming had chosen 3 to visit personally, but that did not mean the rest could be ignored. Letters and gifts still had to be sent for every Purple Mansion realm representative who attended the Dharma assembly, with the excuse that he was in seclusion, consolidating his divine ability, and unable to come in person. Li Ziming had long since prepared personal letters for the Golden Feather sect, the Hengzhu Dao Gate, and the Profound Peak Gate, each accompanied by a treasured panacea. Li Xiaowei took them and then reported Li Chenghuai's breakthrough. Li Ziming was very satisfied and nodded, "Have him come up to see me." Just as he finished speaking, a man hurried up outside the hall and respectfully reported, "Family head, Taoist master, someone has come to the island." He claims to be the son of an old acquaintance and requests an audience with the family head. The son of an old acquaintance. Li Xiaowei's thoughts stirred slightly, uncertain who this could be. He saw a flicker of heavenly light move between Li Ziming's brows. Li Ziming sat down to the side, his voice faintly cold, "Bring him up." The man quickly withdrew. After a dozen seconds, hurried footsteps sounded on the steps before the hall. Someone stumbled inside, fell to his knees with a thud, and knocked his head against the floor. Paying respects to the family head, Li Xiaowei examined him closely. It was a middle-aged man with a face full of stubble, his cultivation at the late stage of the Qi cultivation realm. His features held a hint of nobility, yet his face was overcome with panic and fear. His legs trembled as he kept kowtowing. Li Xiaowei did not recognize him, but Li Ziming sipped his tea and said casually, "So it is young Master Yuan. I wonder, what business brings you here?" The words chilled the man on the ground to the bone. He felt like he might die on the spot, unable to speak a single word. Li Ziming only lowered his gaze, drinking his tea without sparing him a glance. After a while, Li Chenghuai entered the hall. Standing to the side, he glanced casually at the man. But the more he looked, the more familiar he seemed. His heart jolted. Yuan Fao. This man was indeed the son of an old acquaintance, Yuan Fao, the son of Yuan Chengdun. Years ago, Yuan Tuan had disappeared, and Yuan Chengdun sailed out to sea, expecting never to return. He used his lifelong friendship with the Li family and his entire estate to secure a marriage betrothal for his son, Yuan Fao. But Yuan Haiyuan and Yuan Hudu, eager to curry favor with the Kai family, broke the agreement, gave Yuan Fao the estate, and married him into the Song family instead. The rift between Li and Yuan families had begun from that moment, and by now it had reached the point where even Li Zizhai and Yuan Chengzhao had turned against one another. Li Ziming knew this matter well, and also knew that Yuan Fao had later lived a life of comfort with a beautiful wife, becoming the master of the Song household. Yet here he was now. The Li family members had varied expressions on their faces, while Yuan Fao himself was speechless. Life in the Song family had indeed begun with a beautiful wife and leisurely days of cultivation and music, but 10 years had passed in a blink, and the conflict between North and South had broken out. Thanks to his family's favor, Yuan Fao had not needed to go to the riverfront battles, and he had breathed a sigh of relief. But the Song family had suffered heavy losses in the conflict and began eyeing Yuan Chengdun's inheritance. One day they borrowed 5 coins, and the next 10. They continued to press him daily. With the world in chaos, he could not escape. Bad news then followed one after another. The Kai family's main bloodline was destroyed, and the Song family declined steeply. Their demands grew harsher, but fortunately, his father's relics were abundant and well hidden, allowing him to endure for over 10 years while keeping a low profile. But any hope of a comfortable life was gone. Hearing of the Li family's rise, and of Li Zizhai, who had almost been his brother-in-law, achieving great cultivation and earning renown throughout Jiangnan as the rosy glows of the celestial pavilion, Yuan Fao began to regret bitterly. He was gnawed by remorse like a rat, restless and sleepless. When Li Ziming's divine ability resonated across Jiangnan through the great void, Yuan Fao was struck with terror. He immediately leaped out a window, taking no one and nothing with him, hiding in the wilderness for months. Only later did he learn that on that very night, the Azure Ponsec's forces descended upon the Song family, leaving not a single survivor. His wives, concubines, and children were all dead, yet he had been born a pampered son. Even the lowest treatment in the Song household was beyond what ordinary rogue cultivators could dream of. Hiding here and there, unable to face anyone, he felt his life was no life at all. He feared that Li Ziming might recall him one day and tear through the great void to seize him. At last he came to the lake on his own. Shivering for a long time, he recounted his misery, then said hoarsely, "This lowly one regrets too late. I beg the immortal family to show mercy." Li Xiaowei had already understood everything. He looked on coldly and thought, he does have some scheming in him, but his character will never make him great. Chapter 1057, White River Stream Region I. Li Ziming immediately understood Yuan Fao. The wilderness is the territory of the Xiao and Kong families, and since my family is about to settle there, everyone must be trying to use him to curry favor with us. The Si family destroyed the Song family, and his bloodline is already in their hands. Whether they seek him out is just a matter of time, yet coming to us of his own accord is indeed a clever way to preserve his life and fortune. Although Yuan Fao was timid by nature, his father, Yuan Chengdun, had been a man of towering integrity. He had slain demons and exorcised fiends, earned a fearsome reputation, saved countless commoners during the Devil Plague, and even shared ties with Li Yunjiao. The Li family had long stated that even if matters between the two families fell through, they would still look after Yuan Fao. Though Yuan Fao had embarrassed himself, the Li family would not truly harm him for Yuan Chengdun's sake. To treat him with courtesy would only highlight the magnanimity befitting an immortal family. Yuan Fao had most likely realized this, which was why he had dared to make the journey in the first place. He displayed his own cunning in seeking out the family head, Li Xiaowei, before anyone else, so as not to be taken advantage of by lesser figures. Now Li Ziming sat to the side, while Li Xiaowei naturally did not stand at the center. He remained silent, yet his cold gaze showed he understood the matter clearly. Li Ziming sipped his tea and spoke softly, "You overstate things. My family has no mind to quarrel with you." Chenghui escorted the young master back to Mushroom Forest Plain. Li Chenghui answered respectfully and acted without further words. Being at the Foundation establishment realm, he simply lifted Yuan Fao, rendering the middle-aged man instantly immobile. Having met Yuan Fao in his youth, Li Chenghui sighed inwardly as he dragged him away. Li Ziming sat upright, tea bowl in hand, and spoke after a long moment. Yuan Chengdun was once a man of great talent, yet his son turned out like a rat in a granary. It would be one thing if his innate ability were merely low, but to live by leaning on his father's shadow while thinking only of himself. Truly, the matter of offspring is impossible to predict. His words carried an obscure meaning, and Li Xiaowei could only respond softly. Yuan Fao is indeed quick-witted, but the Yuan family spoiled him. Though clever, he grew up muddled and petty. Even a fool, given daily guidance, can accomplish something in time. Li Ziming waved his hand, drew a jade box from his sleeve, and said, "Let us not dwell on this. I obtained a stalk of hornwood golden tassel from the Sword Gate. Take it, and extend some benefits to Wanglin Blossom." Li Xiaowei only replied, "The matter of transplanting the Wanglin Blossom has yet to be settled," but only then did Li Ziming understand. The Wanglin Blossom had been planted in Mount Huaqian for many years. In the early days of the Li family, the mountain was adequate, but now it had become barren, and being near the lake was unsafe. Naturally, the blossom needed to be relocated onto the island. Then let us wait for now. The Wanglin Blossom is far too precious to move rashly. I was just thinking of visiting Changxi, so I will discuss this matter with him as well. Once they were done with family matters, Li Ziming vanished into the great void. Li Xiaowei stood in the hall for a few breaths before taking the main seat. Lifting a vermilion brush, he ordered, "Summon the peak manager at once." The peak manager was naturally the cultivator who had allowed Yuan Fao into the island. He was also Li Hun's father, named Li Anshuo. His given name should have been Li Jiangshuo, but because his innate ability had been lacking in his youth, he had never entered the island and grew up outside. Thus, his original name was still more commonly used. He now served as peak manager at one of the peak offices on the western shore. The attendant responded immediately and withdrew. After several minutes, a man entered the hall and bowed in the courtyard. Without lifting his head, Li Xiaowei asked, "What benefits did you receive?" Li Anshuo knelt and replied respectfully, reporting to the family head. Yuan Fao offered a portion of a staff technique to the family. He handed it over upon entering the island. How cautious of him. It seems this is Yuan Chengdun's staff technique. No wonder you were willing to take such a risk to introduce him personally. Li Xiaowei marked the register with his brush, showing no anger, and continued, "Yuan Fao is not without wit. I presume this technique had no grade written on it. That would ease your concerns." Li Anshuo broke into a cold sweat. He quickly replied, "Your insight is correct, family head. It was transcribed by the Yuan family themselves, so it bears no grade. Sit." Li Xiaowei motioned for him to sit to the side before finally raising his head. Li Anshuo averted his eyes under that gaze, and then heard Li Xiaowei say casually, "Do not scheme within the island. Since you have such inclinations, accompany me to the Eastern Bank tomorrow. There are plenty of places there for you to pursue such endeavors. If you do well, you will reap benefits. If you fail, today's matter will end along with you." Li Anshuo was both startled and overjoyed, quickly expressing his gratitude. The man clearly had much confidence, since his face lit up with joy upon hearing the words. It seemed serving as a mere peak manager by the lake all these years had indeed wasted his abilities. Li Xiaowei waved his hand to dismiss him. "Go now. Second brother is waiting for you in the side hall." The words made Li Anshuo pause again before he hastily withdrew. Li Xiaowei then ordered someone to fetch Yuan Chengdun's staff technique, rubbing the center of his brows. This Li Anshuo, perhaps he can indeed be put to use. The Li family was truly short on capable people at the moment. The few Foundation establishment realm guest cultivators had somewhat made up for their lack of numbers, but there was a glaring gap in talent at the Qi cultivation realm. Most of the Chengming generation had likely died in battle by the river. The Zhuing generation was in decline. The four supporting families of Lijiang were heavily damaged, and both the eastern and western shores had yet to recover their vital Qi. Yet the Li family's enterprises only continued to expand. Family head. Li Xiaowei lifted his head to see Li Chenghui slip into the hall like a ghost, carrying a jade slip in his hands. He offered it up and spoke in a low voice, reporting to the family head, "Someone from the Fei family has arrived with 2 pieces of news." Li Xiaowei accepted the jade slip that recorded the staff technique, reading it carefully while listening to Li Chenghui's report. First, the Fei family's old family head, Fei Tongyu, passed away a few days ago. He died while attempting to break through to Foundation establishment realm, having secluded himself for only a few months before perishing. There were no great phenomena. An old man. Obstinacy was inevitable, muttered Li Xiaowei. With Fei Tongyu's broken body and shallow cultivation, attempting to reach the Foundation establishment realm could only end in death. There was never any need to dwell on it. Fei Qingyi had written several letters trying to dissuade him, but had ultimately failed to stop the old man. His death was like a grain of sand, stirring only a small ripple within the Fei family. It had already become no more than a passing piece of news by the time it reached the lake. Li Chenghui did not linger and continued. Fei Qingyi of the Fei family has broken through to the late stage of the qi cultivation realm. He has emerged from Glacial Cloud Peak and is waiting on the island, hoping to contribute to affairs on the lake. Li Xiaowei was currently lacking manpower, so he nodded and said, "He will accompany us to Jiangbei." After Li Chenghui withdrew, Li Xiaowei finished skimming through the jade slip in his hand. Yuan Chengdun was indeed a genius. This set of staff techniques, subduing demons in Green Mountains, was likely of the 4th grade. It could already serve as a treasured inheritance for any ordinary family. Chapter 1058, White River Stream Region II. The Great River was the foremost water vein of the world, spanning east to west and dividing the lands into north and south. Crossing the river northward led into Jiangbei of Su State, where the first territory one encountered was White River Stream, domain of the Mifan 3 sects of Mount Zioshi. Li Chenghui rode on thunder as he flew over White River Stream. Looking around, he saw Mount Tangdao, the range belonging to the Golden Tang Gate, to the north of White River Stream. Its undulating ridgelines were faintly visible in the distance. To the east lay the domain of White Yi Stream, under the Baiyi capital Immortal Dao. However, it was hidden behind vast stretches of hills and not clearly visible. Beyond Baiyi Stream was Chengshui Tomb, and farther east lay the White Sea Stream, under the Xuanmiao Temple, which led eventually to the seashore. If one flew higher, one could see how Jiangbei was divided by 3 water veins, from west to east: White River, White Yi, and White Sea. According to Old, these 3 streams had once been one river, the Huai River. But when the ancient cataclysm happened and the 6 prefectures sank beneath the sea, the Huai River broke apart and vanished, leaving only the 3 streams. Li Chenghui led Buzhai and Ensiwei to Floating Cloud Cave. Along the way, they saw only devastation. The people had naturally all been taken, and the spirit paddies ruined beyond recognition, leaving behind nothing but bare spirit fields. They landed before the mountain gate of Floating Cloud Cave. The protective formation on the low hill had long been torn apart. Rubble lay scattered everywhere, and a few low-ranked rabbit mice scurried about the abandoned courtyard. Buzhai, who was familiar with the place, led the way. He pointed as he said, "My lord, Fudu's immortal foundation was spring on wood. He fell upon this mountain, and the plants have flourished everywhere. Though it has only been a few months, it looks as though decades have passed." Ensiwei made his way to the summit, and using the earthly court detection technique to probe, exclaimed in admiration, "Jiangbei truly has abundant spiritual energy. No wonder so many Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators flock here. Even this single low hill can sustain the cultivation of several Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators." The number of sites in the Li family's domain, aside from a few places like Milan, Zhaijing, and Pingya that could support Purple Mansion Realm cultivation, that could sustain multiple Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators, was extremely limited. There were only 5 such places in 16 prefectures, yet this mountain was low and its earth vein thin. It was clearly not the stuff of a renowned peak. Buzhai simply remarked, reporting to the Dharma Protector, "There are indeed many spirit fields within Floating Cloud Cave's domain, but most of the land is hilly, with no high mountains in sight. The Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators are normally scattered across these low hills. Even the main peak lacks many resident cultivators." Li Chenghui understood clearly. Floating Cloud Cave was far less centralized than the powers of Jiangnan. It resembled more of a loose Foundation Establishment Realm alliance. It was large in scale, but hollow and fragmented, with every member harboring their own agenda. That was why Li Xiaowei had been helpless, and why, once the tide turned, they descended into bloodshed over Fudu. These people split the wealth and each fled for their lives. At least that made things cleaner. Li Chenghui sent Buzhai to survey the fields and Ensiwei to examine the mountains. He ordered his own cultivators to spread out and claim the land. The territory of Floating Cloud Cave was about the size of the western shore of Moongaze Lake, but it was desolate everywhere and lacked common folk, giving it a barren, empty appearance. After 3 or 4 days of work, he had cultivators assigned across the mountains, letting them repair their own dwellings. Since there were no ordinary people in the area, each cultivator simply took a place for themselves, making the occupation far easier. After another half-day, nearly 100 embryonic breathing realm cultivators arrived, along with runners, farmers, and gatherers. Li Chenghui distributed them among his Qi cultivation realm subordinates. The Floating Cloud domain immediately came alive, as it began to show traces of cultivator activity at last. Li Chenghui was not exactly a master of governance, but he was capable enough. Even so, it took him nearly 5 days to set the framework in place. It was only thanks to Jiangbei's abundant spiritual energy and the eagerness of his subordinates that he managed to accomplish it so quickly. In a barren land, it would have taken several times longer. Once his arrangements were in place, and Siwei returned on the wind and landed in the mountains, speaking softly, there are traces of demonic creatures in 9 places within Floating Cloud's domain. 6 places had lesser demons, which were dealt with by the men we sent. 2 had late-stage Qi cultivation realm demons, which I eliminated. Only 1 remains, which seems to be the dwelling of a demon general. Its background is unknown. A message was delivered, saying it is in seclusion. Li Chenghui summoned Buzhai. Though the old man had little experience in administration, his age and steady expertise in surveying spirit fields made him reliable. After hearing in Siwei's summary, he waved his hand and said, "The master should know that a demon flood dragon, a figure among the dragon clan, dwells within White River Stream. It settled in the river years ago. I heard that when the dragon sun passed through White Sea Stream, it even sent people to question him. He is not someone we can afford to offend. He is at the late stage of the Foundation establishment realm, and of an exceedingly noble lineage." He was even conferred the title of North Brocade River King. His authority extends not only over White River Stream, but across all 3 streams. It is simply that White River Stream is clearer, and the elder prefers to reside here. The one cultivating in the mountains is a serpent demon who has acknowledged the one beneath White River Stream as his foster father. Thus, he is rather arrogant. When Fudu was still here, he had to send offerings every year. So he truly does have powerful backing, muttered Li Chenghui. And Siwei, reliable as always, had even delivered a formal invitation. Li Chenghui nodded to himself, about to speak, when a woman descended upon the mountains. The woman wore a crimson dress embroidered with true fire patterns, with a golden sash tied at her waist. She held a golden lamp in her slender hand, which flickered with a wisp of red-white fire. Li Chenghui rose, saluted her, and said with a smile, "Elder sister, you have arrived." The 6-cornered scarlet flame lamp gleamed in Li Minggong's hand, pure feather radiant fire, glowing with a soft red and white radiance, burning merrily within. The briars along the path had been reduced to ash merely by lifting it. She smiled. "I came ahead. The family head will arrive shortly. I wish to see whether my younger brother has finished matters regarding Floating Cloud Cave. Only the matter of pacifying the demon remains." Li Chenghui acknowledged, frowning as he said, "Since he is in seclusion, and our family is a Purple Mansion Realm immortal clan, it is enough that we do not provoke each other. Our family does not need that mountain. Let him cultivate there. Well." Buzhai, skilled at reading words and expressions, had already discerned his master's style over the past few days. He reminded them, "This serpent demon is very fierce. In the past, he gave no respect to anyone, even Fudu. Every year in the 8th month, he came to demand blood food. Now that it is already the 9th month, he is likely awake. How could Li Chenghui not understand?" Even Li Minggong raised her brows. Li Chenghui said in a low voice, "Oh, then he refuses to meet with our family." Li Minggong chuckled. "Whether he wishes to meet or not, what does it matter? Now that a Purple Mansion Realm family is here, would he dare utter a single word of defiance?" Though she said this aloud, inwardly she sneered, "Let alone this junior kin of the Dragon clan, even if the Dragon's son himself came. Our family head has spoken," and laughed with him. "But since this matter touches upon foxes and dragons, we must not reveal it." Li Xiaowei had broken through under the auspices of dragon-invited rites. Although the Li family feared drawing greater foes by leaning on dragon might, and thus never spread word inland, many of the old Purple Mansion Realm families of Jiangnan knew of it. Since their grandaunt's life and death was still uncertain, they preferred silence. If not for that, no matter how Li Xiaowei struggled, he could not have held out for more than 10 years. He would have long since been killed. Li Chenghui understood as well and cared little. He only instructed. Still, the invitation must be delivered to at least meet him once. "Our family intends to migrate people here. Should he one day go mad and leave his mountain in search of blood food, that would cost lives." Li Chenghui's words were veiled. Whether it was human or demon lives that would be lost, it was hard to say. Buzhai understood and smiled bitterly inside as he said tactfully, "It is better to win the favor of the North Brocade River King. This serpent demon is only relying on him. I fear one who of Hidden Cloud Cave may already have gone ahead to curry favor with the North Brocade River King. If so, life upon our lake will become difficult." Chapter 1059 Greetings, Great Lord. Buzai was an old fox. He racked his brains and whispered, "The serpent demon is not strong, so he dares not say much. But the North Brocade River King is a demon highly regarded by the Dragon Sun, with authority over the three streams. A few years ago, even cultivators of the Bai capital Immortal Dao personally paid him a visit." The old man's hidden meaning was, your family has a Purple Mansion Realm cultivator. His side also has a Purple Mansion Realm cultivator. Since when has the Dragon Clan ever feared anyone? He spoke as if it were about favor and prestige, but in truth it was a cautious reminder not to let the Li family's ways offend such a being. His roundabout phrasing made Li Minggong chuckle inwardly. Li Chenghui answered with a smile, "Honored guests, you may set your minds at ease." As he spoke, heavenly light gathered, and several figures descended from the south and landed in the mountains. They were led by a man clad in radiant light armor, gripping a halberd as his golden eyes shone. He was accompanied by a stern-looking black-clad man with a sword at his waist. Li Chenghui and the others rose at once to welcome them. "We greet the family head." Li Xiaowei helped him up, entered the newly repaired hall, and without sitting asked, "How have matters here progressed?" Li Chenghui recounted everything in detail. All had gone smoothly, except for the lingering issue of the serpent demon, which he deliberately asked Buzai to repeat. The old man dared not be careless and explained it clearly from start to finish. Li Xiaowei frowned. The reason was simple. Li Xiaowei had a good personal connection with Dingjiao, but the gap between their two sides was like heaven and earth. Such ties could not be cashed in lightly. Once used, it would mean settling all accounts with the Dragon Prince. Even a Purple Mansion Realm ancient spirit artifact had not been enough to sway him on such matters. Dingjiao is the White Dragon Prince, but the faction behind this North Brocade River King may not be aligned with the White Dragon. It might be manageable if it were any other lineage, but if he belongs to the Black Dragon side, then we would be provoking a heap of trouble for no reason at all. Li Xiaowei had long heard that the Dragon Clan was not a united front. He had personally seen how Dingjiao had made things difficult for Miao Yi at the Miao family's place in the Southern Sea. In the end, it always came down to the struggle between White Dragon and Black Dragon factions. Although the Dragon Clan usually would not intervene, if the North Brocade River King chose to make things difficult by showing up now and then for a bite of blood food, it would be enough to disgust us with no place to voice our grievances. Li Xiaowei pondered for a moment, then asked, "What exactly is the true form of this North Brocade River King?" This, Buzai froze, unable to speak for a long while before finally struggling to say, "I do not know for certain. I have only heard rumors. They say this North Brocade River King cultivates the converging water Dao, wielding a profound radiance of great power. Wherever he passes, not only does he plunge people into maddening illusions, he can also turn them into blood water." Li Xiaowei grew thoughtful as understanding dawned in his heart. At that moment, his ear grew warm and a calm, ethereal voice drifted in, as though carried from the great void itself. "Mingwang, go at once to meet this serpent demon. Take men with you." Recognizing it as Li Ziming's voice, Li Xiaowei put away his weapon and immediately gave the order, "I will go meet this serpent demon." He acted decisively. He immediately called upon Li Chenghui, Li Minggong, and a few others, leaving only Siwei to guard the household. Riding a stream of light into the sky, he thought to himself, this serpent demon is no real figure of note. To trouble a Purple Mansion Realm cultivator, it must be related to the matter of Hidden Cloud Cave. Having understood, he quickened his pace and reached the White River Stream in less than 7 minutes. The waters of the White River Stream were clear with a faint azure hue. It was the purest and longest of the three streams. It even had a small attached lake, unlike the turbid White Yi stream to the east. Of course, this lake could not compare with Moongaze Lake. It spanned only 25 kilometers in circumference, but looked like a small gem of blue-green set among the rolling hills from afar. Beyond it, another 25 kilometers onward, a verdant mountain with striking peaks rose into view. This mountain was far taller than the main mountain of Floating Cloud Cave, and should have been the finest spirit mountain within its territory. But Fudu was inferior in background, inferior in strength, and had no qualifications to compete in means, so naturally it had been seized by the serpent demon. Li Xiaowei hovered before the mountain, sending Buzai ahead to announce their arrival. Li Chenghui stepped forward and used mana to transmit his voice. "Family head, I saw someone waiting at the foot of the mountain. I fear others have already come to meet this serpent demon. Without a doubt, it must be Hidden Cloud Cave," replied Li Xiaowei. His eyes narrowed slightly, dimming the glow around him. After waiting a while, Kbujai returned riding the wind, his face sooty and disheveled. He bowed as he reporting to the family head, "The demonic creature said he was entertaining guests and is not fit to be seen." Seeing his wretched state, it was clear those demons had not been as polite as his words claimed. Li Xiaowei nodded. "This serpent demon has long devoured men. Naturally, there is nothing left for us to discuss. He shall be slain today, lest future troubles arise." He soared straight into the mountain on a stream of light, where lush growth surrounded him. Drawing his halberd, he descended with a cold expression, and sure enough, 2 demon soldiers stood at the cave entrance. One was holding a blade and the other a spear. Seeing another arrival, their impatience flared, and the leopard-headed demon barked, "Where do you nobodies keep coming from? I said my master does not receive visitors. Can't you understand demon speech?" Li Xiaowei stood tall, with halberd in hand and armor blazing with golden radiance, and said coldly, "Open those dog eyes wide before you speak again." "Yo." The leopard-headed demon tossed his spear to the ground, rolled up his sleeves, and strode forward. When his gaze met Li Xiaowei's golden eyes, he froze, then sniffed the air. He hesitated. "So it turns out a great elder has come. May I know which mountain or ridge you hail from, elder? This little leopard failed to recognize your exalted presence." Li Xiaowei had long seen how White Banyan dealt with such creatures. He glared. "Stupid slave, you fail to recognize a noble lineage. Tell your master to crawl out here and pay me homage." The 2 demons were terrified out of their wits. After exchanging glances, one hurried into the cave. Barely 20 seconds later, a man emerged, surrounded by a crowd of lesser demons. Dressed in a gaudy python-embroidered robe, he was unspeakably ugly. He craned his neck out of the cave mouth and squinted. Li Xiaowei met his eyes with a cold, unyielding gaze. The serpent demon's heart pounded with unease. It hurried down the mountain, craning its neck to look. But no matter how it looked, the figure before it was clearly the direct lineage of a great demonic beast, with bloodline beyond compare. After weighing its words, it cautiously said, "I do not know which great lord of the mountains you may be. This little one is merely a steward under the North Brocade River King's manor, scraping a living here. If you have commands to give, it would be best to request an audience with the North Brocade River King himself." Li Xiaowei did not move in the slightest. Planting his halberd firmly into the ground, his expression remained ice-cold as he said, "What kind of thing are you? Which water mansion does your master belong to?" Demons happen to respond best to exactly this kind of bearing. The serpent demon's doubts diminished by more than half. Forcing a grin, he hurried closer to the formation's edge. After hesitating for a while, he still did not dare step out, but flicked his tongue and answered, "This humble and wretched place somehow drew the exalted presence of a noble lineage. This little serpent is truly honored. My king is not of the direct lineage of the water mansions, but was granted authority by the dragon son to temporarily oversee the territory of the 3 streams, not of the water mansion's direct lineage." Li Xiaowei laughed coldly, contempt curling on his face as he asked, "If that is the case, then how dare he not come out to greet me when I have arrived in his domain? Which lineage does he belong to?" The serpent demon finally showed a trace of fear and wailed, "My lord, I am but a lowly steward in the manor. How could I possibly know such things? Please allow me to introduce you to the king." Li Xiaowei bared his teeth in a chilling smile and said icily, "Then why are you not quickly inviting me inside? Yo." The serpent demon immediately leaped up from the ground, casting aside its gaudy robe. It darted out of the great formation, dropped to its knees, and put on its most obsequious expression. "Greetings, great lord." Chapter 1060, North Brocade River King I. The serpent demon bowed at the formation's edge. Li Xiaowei guessed that there were still cultivators from Hidden Cloud Cave inside its lair. He stepped forward, heavenly light spilling down from his halberd, and asked, "I scented humans lingering in your territory. How many cultivators are there? Have they been boiled or stewed, or are they emissaries of some power?" The serpent demon realized why Li Xiaowei had not entered the formation, but instead forced him to come out. Bowing respectfully, he said, "This little one has no background and did not know the great elder would come. I would not dare to harm the great king. Those within the formation belong to a minor nearby faction. They are from Hidden Cloud Cave, here to deliver blood food to me. To the south, a bright yang purple mansion realm immortal family has risen with intentions of claiming this region. But they are stubborn and old-fashioned. Though I do not fear them, I cannot be bothered to entangle myself with them. I simply accepted Hidden Cloud Cave's blood food and let them seek an audience with my king." Oh, Li Xiaowei did not step into the formation. Instead, he sat right where he was and asked, "Does your king intend to meddle in the affairs of humans?" "Of course not." The serpent demon hesitated for a moment. Since he did not consider it a real secret, he focused only on currying favor with the golden-eyed beast before him and said reverently, "It was merely to speak with my king about some matters. The White River stream is the water vein of this land, and my lord cultivates the converging water Tao. Converging water is the master of water veins, so controlling the spirit waters and spirit springs to influence the growth of spirit paddies is not difficult at all. The cultivators of Bay capital Immortal Tao seem to have more to discuss with my king, but I am not aware of the details." It kept its head down, its gaudy robe dragging on the ground. Its true form resembled a patterned python. Li Xiaowei had already made his judgment, but just then, two cultivators flew out from the mountain cave. They were led by a heavily painted woman, who descended with guarded vigilance. The serpent demon had not recognized Li Xiaowei, but there was not a single member of the Miffin Three Sects who could forget him. He had barely landed before the underlings of Hidden Cloud Cave recognized him. In moments, they summoned their Foundation Establishment Realm cultivator out. Li Xiaowei secretly tightened his grip on the halberd. The hidden plunder gold flickered in his juke acupoint, while heavenly radiance, hidden light circulated in secret as his mana surged to its peak. The patterned python serpent demon only heard shouts from within the formation. Mang Huazi. "Do not let him deceive you. That is a man of the Li family." The patterned python demon dumbly raised his head, only to see Li Xiaowei's expression unchanged save for a sudden point of golden light flaring between his broad brows. Boom. A thunderous blast echoed above as golden heavenly radiance. Hidden light flashed across the mountains for but an instant. Tears welled at the corners of Mang Huazi's eyes as he sprang up, summoning demon winds to retreat. Pitifully, the heavily painted woman had barely stepped out of the formation when the heavenly radiance hidden light struck her head-on. Her body burst with a deafening crack, sparks flew like rain, and white smoke rose. She cried out in agony, "Ah, the pain is unbearable." How could Li Xiaowei let the patterned python serpent demon right in front of him escape? Using heavenly radiance, hidden light to kill it would have been excessive. First, he struck down the strongest cultivator of Hidden Cloud Cave with a beam of Dharma light, then drew the Dusheng halberd and said, "Where do you think you're running?" Mang Huazi, caught between shock and fury, seethed with humiliation. He assumed some strange immortal foundation or sinister spell had tricked him. He raised a bone-like Dharma artifact in his hand and cursed, "You." Before he could finish the word, Li Xiaowei's Dusheng halberd was already at his chest. The blackened red glow of the armor cycle's soul-refining halberd art flared, mingling with radiant light and casting dark shadows. Mang Huazi was forced to raise his Dharma artifact in a desperate block. Clang. The halberd slammed into the bone Dharma artifact with a muffled crash. Mang Huazi's face turned ashen as he nearly revealed his true form. Li Xiaowei had been in Foundation Establishment Realm for over a decade, spending more time honing techniques than his cultivation. He had fought endlessly against the Miffin Three Sects and developed a formidable combat prowess. Though only at Mid-Foundation Establishment Realm, he was a veteran of 100 battles, and his realm was exceedingly stable. Mang Huazi, though also at Mid-Foundation Establishment Realm, was far less impressive. He immediately realized he was outmatched. It was only thanks to his Dharma artifact that he avoided instant disgrace, but Li Xiaowei redirected the Dusheng halberd with a twist of his wrist. Its specially curved blade instantly hooked the bone artifact, trapping it. A surge of radiant light erupted, preventing Mang Huazi from pulling it back. Mang Huazi tugged helplessly at his entangled artifact, but then saw radiant light flare once again between Li Xiaowei's brows. Terror flooded him, and his heart sank with bitter grievance. Who is this man? He must be of a Purple Mansion lineage. He's someone on par with the North Brocade River King. Why use a butcher's blade to kill a chicken? Mana gathered in his mouth as he activated the immortal foundation art veiling dust mist, spewing out a black radiance that cloaked his body. Hidden in darkness, he sought to shake off the browlight that tracked him. Petty trickery, thought Li Xiaowei. He suddenly opened his eyes, golden brilliance pouring forth and piercing through the darkness. The bright Yang Dao lineage did not lack for perception techniques, and he already possessed innate uncommon eyes. He thundered aloud, by decree. A spark flared, white smoke scattered, and Mang Huazi wailed. Blood poured forth as a gaping hole was torn into his chest. Panic-stricken, he cried, "Spare me, my lord. At least report to my king first, then kill me if you must." The Dusheng halberd descended from the heavens before he could finish. Mang Huazi could no longer maintain his human guise and revealed his true form, a brilliantly patterned python, as he crashed into the forest. The Dusheng halberd pierced through his vital point, pinning him to the ground. Li Xiaowei had not even used his full strength. The Yang Li Red Sparrow banner in his sleeve remained untouched, and the Supreme Yang Resonance Radiant Art uncast, yet he had already subdued the demon. Striding up to the python's head, he commanded, "Summon the North Brocade River King." Manghuazi had been suppressed in the blink of an eye, and the cultivators of Hidden Cloud Cave had fared no better. With Li Chenghui's reputation preceding him and the head of the place already wounded and pinned by Li Xiaowei, none dared to face him. They scattered and fled one by one. Li Minggong held the six-cornered scarlet flame lamp. The wounded woman forced herself to gather strength and brace the formation. She halted in front of it and shouted, "Are you people from Moongaze Lake? My Hidden Cloud Cave has never offended the immortal families, so why do you strike at me?" Hidden Cloud Cave. Li Minggong shook her head and said loudly, "We came under orders to slay demonic creatures. All we saw were a few devil cultivators colluding with foul demons. We saw no cultivators of Hidden Cloud Cave." The woman was struck speechless. She could not admit to her dealings with this demon, yet with the Li family blocking the formation, she could only stew in anger no matter what Li Minggong said. Rage welled within her, and she snapped coldly, "Why must you bully us so far?" "Bully you?" Li Minggong almost laughed. She recognized Maya Shui of Hidden Cloud Cave, someone she had once fought. Back then she had shown no mercy. Lifting the six-cornered scarlet flame lamp, she puffed her cheeks and blew softly. At her breath, the lamp spewed pure feather radiant fire. It burst into countless red and white feathers, cascading down that fluttered toward Maya Shui.